Story 1: The Backwards Mile. The odometer clicked backwards. Derek Matheson watched the digital display drop from 73,412 miles to 73,411, then 410, 409. His Kenworth T680 maintained exactly 68 miles per hour eastbound on Interstate 40 through the New Mexico desert. But according to every instrument in the cab, he was traveling in reverse through space itself. The CB radio had gone silent 40 minutes ago. Not static, silence. The kind that pressed against eardrums like deep water. Derek had been hauling refrigerated pharmaceuticals from Phoenix to Oklahoma City for 6 years, running this exact route twice monthly, and he'd never experienced anything like the hollow quiet that filled his cab now. He pressed the transmit button. Breaker 19, this is Nighthawk looking for a radio check. Anybody out there? His voice disappeared into that terrible silence without even producing feedback. Outside, the desert looked wrong. The saguaro cacti cast shadows in directions that defied the setting sun's position. Derek checked his watch, 6:47 p.m., October 13, 2023. The sun hung exactly where it should be, low and red on the western horizon behind him. But the shadows stretched northward, some of them bending at impossible angles, draping across the sand like spilled ink. One shadow moved independent of its cactus, sliding across the highway shoulder with deliberate intention. The odometer read 73,392 now. He'd lost 20 miles while traveling forward. Derek's mouth tasted like copper. His hands ached from gripping the steering wheel, knuckles white beneath the leather gloves he always wore on long hauls. The reefer unit behind him hummed its normal 40-degree cycle, but the sound seemed distant, as if it were coming from miles away instead of just beyond the sleeper cab. A mile marker appeared in his headlights, 187. He'd passed marker 189 less than 3 minutes ago. The highway was taking him forward through markers while pulling him backward through space. Derek's GPS showed his blue dot moving correctly along Interstate 40, but the coordinates in the corner of the screen were changing in ways that made his eyes hurt to follow. Longitude numbers flickered between values, sometimes jumping entire degrees in a single second. Then he saw the other truck. It was a Peterbilt 379 classic long nose, painted deep blue with chrome that caught the wrong-angled sunlight and reflected it as black. The truck sat perpendicular across both eastbound lanes, blocking the entire highway. No lights, no movement, just sitting there like a monument to something dark and patient. Derek's foot hit the brake. His Jake brake roared to life, and the Kenworth began its juddering slowdown from 68 miles per hour. 53, 41, 32. The blue Peterbilt grew larger in his windshield, and Derek could see details now that made his stomach clench. The chrome wasn't reflecting darkness, it was absorbing light, pulling it in like a hole in the world. The truck's windshield was tinted so dark it looked solid, a perfect black rectangle that somehow felt like it was looking back at him. 21 miles per hour, 14, 8. Derek stopped his Kenworth 60 feet from the Peterbilt. His hands trembled as he reached for the CB radio again. This is Nighthawk at mile marker 187, eastbound I-40. There's a truck blocking both lanes. Anybody reading? Nothing. He tried his cell phone. No signal, no bars. The screen showed full battery and perfect reception strength, but when he dialed 911, the call wouldn't connect. The phone just displayed calling forever, the word pulsing like a heartbeat. He had to get out, had to see if the other driver needed help, even though every primitive instinct in his brain was screaming at him to reverse, to run, to flee back down the highway toward Albuquerque. Derek grabbed his maglite from the door pocket, checked that his knife was clipped to his belt, and opened the driver's door. The desert air hit him like a physical force. It was wrong, too thick, too cold, tasting of ozone and something organic he couldn't name. The temperature should have been 70 degrees, perfect October evening, but this air felt like January midnight. Derek's breath misted in front of his face. The reefer unit still hummed behind him, but now the sound had an echo, as if the truck were parked in a vast concrete chamber instead of open desert. His boots crunched on the asphalt as he walked toward the Peterbilt. Each step felt like moving through invisible resistance, like the air itself didn't want him approaching the blue truck. The shadows on the ground were all wrong now, some of them stretching toward him regardless of any light source, dark fingers reaching across the faded white lane Markers. Derek was 30 feet from the Peterbilt when he noticed the license plate. It was there, mounted properly on the front bumper, but the numbers and letters were backwards. Not upside down backwards, as if he were seeing them in a mirror. He stopped walking. His maglite beam played across the truck's chrome grille, and the light bent, curving around the metal instead of reflecting properly. Hello, his voice sounded flat dead, absorbed by that too thick air. You okay in there? Your truck's blocking the highway. Well, the Peterbilt's engine started. Not turned over by a key, not ignited by any human action. It just started, a deep rumble that Derek felt in his chest cavity, shaking his ribs and sternum. Black smoke coughed from the vertical exhaust pipes, but the smoke fell instead of rising, pooling around the truck's wheels like liquid shadow. The headlights blazed on, painfully bright, pinning Derek in their glare. He ran, turned, and sprinted back toward his Kenworth, the maglite beam bouncing wildly, his breath coming in sharp gasps that burned his lungs with that too cold air. Behind him, he heard the Peterbilt's transmission engage. Gears ground together with a shrieking metal sound that couldn't come from any properly maintained vehicle. The truck was moving. Derek reached his Kenworth and grabbed the driver's door handle. Locked. His door was locked from the outside, which was impossible because he just exited through it, and these doors didn't lock automatically. Through the window, he could see his keys hanging in the ignition. His phone sat on the dashboard. Everything he needed was inside a locked truck while that thing behind him accelerated. The Peterbilt's engine roar grew louder. Derek looked back. The blue truck was driving straight at him, crossing the distance that should have held 60 feet in seconds, but it wasn't accelerating normally. It was skipping forward, jumping through space, here then 15 feet closer, then 30 feet closer, like a video with frames missing. The black smoke trail behind it hung in the air, forming shapes that looked almost deliberate, almost like reaching hands. Derek ran again, this time alongside the highway into the desert scrub. Sagebrush tore at his jeans. Something sharp, maybe a cactus spine, stabbed through his boot into his foot, but he didn't stop. The Peterbilt's headlights swept across the desert, and where the light touched, the sand turned dark, not shadowed but blackened, as if the illumination were burning it. He risked a glance back. The Peterbilt had stopped next to his Kenworth. Its passenger door opened, swinging out slowly like a mouth yawning. Nothing emerged. The interior of the cab was completely black, darker than the tinted windows, a darkness so absolute it seemed three-dimensional. And from that darkness came a sound, breathing, wet and labored, like something with lungs full of fluid trying to draw air. Derek's foot hit a depression in the sand, and he went down hard, rolling, maglite flying from his grip. He lay there in the sagebrush, 40 yards from the highway, watching the two trucks. The Peterbilt's passenger door remained open. That breathing sound continued, echoing across the desert with impossible volume. Then his Kenworth's reefer unit shut off. Complete silence. Even the Peterbilt's engine had gone quiet. Minutes passed, could have been 10, could have been 30. Derek didn't move, couldn't move. His right ankle throbbed, probably sprained in the fall. Blood seeped warm into his boot from where the cactus spine had punctured his sole. He tasted blood too, realized he'd bitten his tongue when he fell. The copper taste grew stronger. The Peterbilt's door closed. The truck backed up that same impossible skipping motion in reverse and positioned itself across the highway again. Its lights went dark, engine silent, just sitting there waiting exactly as Derek had first seen it. His Kenworth started by itself. The engine turned over and caught, settling into its familiar idle. The headlights came on. The reefer unit kicked back into its cooling cycle, and slowly, with no driver, the truck began rolling forward. It approached the Peterbilt, and Derek waited for the collision, but his Kenworth simply passed through the blue truck, not around it, through it. The two vehicles occupied the same space for a moment, overlapping like a double-exposed photograph, and then his Kenworth was passed, accelerating eastbound down Interstate 40. Derek watched his truck drive away, its tail lights shrinking to red points in the distance. The dot numbers on the trailer doors were visible for a long moment, his company's name in bold letters, and then it was gone, disappearing into the night that had fallen while he lay in the sagebrush. The Peterbilt remained, blocking the highway. Derek pulled himself to his feet. His ankle screamed, but it held his weight. He turned west and started walking, limping back toward Albuquerque. The highway stretched behind him, empty except for that blue truck sitting silent and patient across both lanes. His phone, his wallet, his logbook, all in the cab of a Kenworth that had driven itself away. He walked for 3 hours before a state trooper found him 10 miles west of where his truck should have been. The officer said there were no reports of any disabled vehicles on Interstate 40. No blue Peterbilt, no obstruction. But when Derek checked the odometer in the patrol car, just curious, just needing to see, it read 73,216 miles. His personal truck, his own pickup parked at home, would later show 73,216 miles. His wife's sedan, his daughter's Honda. Every vehicle connected to him rolled back 196 miles on October 13, 2023. The Kenworth T680 hauling refrigerated pharmaceuticals was found 6 days later in a rest area outside Amarillo, Texas, right where the GPS tracking said it should be after traveling east on Interstate 40. The reefer unit still hummed, maintaining perfect temperature. The pharmaceuticals were intact. The cab was locked, keys in the ignition. Everything was exactly as it should be. Except the driver's seat had been moved forward 6 inches. The mirrors had been adjusted for someone taller. And someone had written a single word in the dust on the dashboard, written backwards so it could only be read properly in a mirror. Welcome. Derek never drove Interstate 40 again. He took jobs running north-south routes exclusively, I-25 and I-17, refusing any dispatch that would put him on that east-west highway through New Mexico. He sold his pickup and bought a different truck, got rid of his wife's sedan, even sold his daughter's Honda, buying her something new. But sometimes, late at night when he's driving I-25 through Colorado, Derek checks his odometer obsessively. Watching the numbers click forward, always forward. He checks it every few minutes, waiting for the moment when it might click backwards again. When something might subtract miles he's traveled, taking them back, claiming what he somehow borrowed on that October evening. His wife says he's paranoid. His daughter thinks he had some kind of breakdown. The therapist talks about stress and exhaustion and the dangers of long-haul driving on the human psyche. They all use words like hallucination and episode and trauma response. But Derek knows what he saw. He knows about the Peterbilt that absorbs light instead of reflecting it. He knows about the backwards mile and the truck that drove itself and the word written in dashboard dust. Most of all, he knows that somewhere on Interstate 40, that blue truck is still sitting across both lanes, waiting, blocking the highway. Its dark windshield watching for the next driver who'll stop, who'll get out, who'll approach close enough to see their license plate numbers backwards. Close enough to notice their own odometer clicking in reverse. Close enough to understand that some miles once traveled can never truly be left behind. Story 2: The Convoy That Wasn't There. Mitchell Reeves saw the convoy at 2:37 a.m. on Highway 50 through Nevada, that lonesome stretch they call America's most desolate road. 18 trucks driving in perfect formation, headlights cutting through November darkness, spaced exactly 100 feet apart with military precision. His CB radio came alive with chatter, codes and call signs that didn't match any trucking company language he'd learned in 23 years behind the wheel. A Unit 7 confirming visual on civilian vehicle, over. A copy that 7, maintain formation, do not deviate. Unit 12 experiencing fuel pressure drop, compensating. As acknowledged 12, continue protocol. Mitchell keyed his microphone. Breaker 19, this is Steel Horse running eastbound. You boys having some kind of event tonight? Silence answered him. The convoy maintained its spacing, and Mitchell could see now that all 18 trucks were identical. Freightliner Cascadias painted flat black with no company markings, no dot numbers, no identifying features except for small white numerals on the trailer doors. 1 through 18. The lead truck should have been a mile ahead by now at their speed, but the convoy was pacing him, matching his 63 miles per hour exactly. Mitchell checked his mirrors. Trucks 7 and 8 flanked him, one in each lane, maintaining position. He eased off the accelerator. They slowed with him. He sped up to 68. They accelerated in perfect synchronization. Okay, boys, funny joke, you can move along now. Mitchell's voice came out tighter than he intended. His load of casino equipment was valuable, sure, but this wasn't a hijacking. Hijackers didn't coordinate 18 trucks. Hijackers didn't move with this kind of precision. The CB crackled, civilian vehicle. LU is broadcasting on open channel. Recommend containment procedure 7 Delta. The voice was male, flat, emotionless. Not human flat, nobody sounded that mechanical, but wrong flat, like something imitating speech without understanding inflection. Negative, another voice responded. Maintain observation only. Protocol restricts engagement unless subject demonstrates awareness. Mitchell's hands started sweating inside his gloves. Listen, whoever you are, I don't know what protocol you're running, but I'm a licensed commercial driver with a legal load and you need to clear out. He pushed the accelerator harder, 72 miles per hour, 76, 80. The convoy matched him. 18 trucks accelerating in unison, maintaining perfect spacing, hemming him into the center lane even though Highway 50 only had 2 lanes out here. Mitchell could see 3 trucks ahead of him, 3 behind and 1 on each side, but somehow the formation suggested 18 total. The math didn't work. The physics didn't work. 8 visible trucks couldn't create the impression of 18 truck containment, but they did. He grabbed his cell phone. No signal expected in this dead zone, but he tried anyway. The screen lit up with full bars, which was impossible, and then displayed a message he'd never seen before: communication restricted by network authority. Not no signal, not call failed. A deliberate restriction. That's when Mitchell noticed the mile markers. He'd passed marker 214 about 30 seconds ago. Now marker 214 appeared again in his headlights. Same marker, same slight graffiti on the post, a faded blue tag that looked like a twisted letter R he was looping. The highway was feeding him the same mile of asphalt over and over while the convoy kept pace. "What the hell is this?" Mitchell's voice cracked. He slammed the air horn. The blast echoed across the desert, but the echo sounded wrong, returning from directions where nothing existed to reflect it. The convoy trucks made no acknowledgement. Their engines hummed at identical RPMs, a harmonic frequency that started giving Mitchell a headache. Mile marker 214 passed again. Then again. The same creosote bushes on the shoulder. The same weather-beaten billboard advertising a ghost town museum. The same cluster of rocks shaped vaguely like a crouching figure. Mitchell was driving forward at 80 miles per hour through a single mile of reality copied and pasted into infinity. A subject is displaying signs of distress, the CB announced. Cortisol levels elevated. Recommend moving to phase 2. Mitchell yanked the CB microphone off its clip. "You're reading my cortisol levels. How the hell are you reading my cortisol levels?" He was shouting now, voice raw. No response came. The convoy simply continued its formation, those flat black cascadias moving like parts of a single organism. He tried the brake. The pedal pushed back against his foot with unusual resistance, like pressing into solid rubber. The speedometer needle didn't drop. 80 miles per hour, always 80. His engine RPMs showed correct correlation, transmission engaged properly, but the brake system refused to function. Mitchell pumped the pedal, nothing. He pulled the manual trailer brake. The handle moved, but nothing happened, no drag, no slowdown, no response. Mile marker 214 approached again, that blue graffiti tag mockingly familiar. Mitchell cranked the steering wheel hard right, aiming for the shoulder, for the desert, for anything that would break this loop. The wheel spun freely in his hands, disconnected from any steering mechanism. His truck continued straight down Highway 50, perfectly centered in its lane, while his hands rotated the wheel uselessly through 360 degrees. The subject attempting to deviate from designated path, the CB stated. Control override engaged. No damage to subject or cargo. The panic clawed up Mitchell's throat. He wasn't driving anymore. Something else was controlling his truck, steering it, maintaining speed, keeping him trapped in this recursive mile. The convoy trucks paced him like prison guards, their headlights creating harsh shadows that didn't match their positions. Then the convoy started changing. Truck 7 to his immediate left shimmered. The Freightliner Cascadia shape remained, but details began shifting. The trailer stretched longer, then contracted. The cab's proportions distorted, growing taller, then squatter. The black paint rippled like liquid. Mitchell watched, unable to look away, as the truck beside him became something that hurt to perceive directly. His eyes couldn't focus on it properly. The shape existed in 3 dimensions, but suggested more angles that extended into spaces his brain couldn't map. A phase 2 initiated, the CB announced, revealing base configuration for subject evaluation. All 18 trucks began their transformation. The perfect Freightliner Cascadias dissolved into forms that made Mitk. Hell's stomach heave. They were still trucks, technically trucks, but trucks designed according to geometry that defied Euclidean principles. Wheels that rotated in multiple directions simultaneously. Trailers with surfaces that were somehow concave and convex at the same time. Windows that opened into depths that couldn't exist within the physical dimensions of the vehicle. And inside those windows, Mitchell saw the drivers. They weren't human, couldn't be human. The proportions were wrong, too tall, too narrow, limbs that bent at joints humans didn't possess. They sat in their cabs perfectly still, staring forward with eyes that reflected his headlights as solid silver. No pupils, no iris, just mirrors where eyes should be, casting back his own horror. The subject experiencing acute psychological distress, the CB voice continued, still emotionless. Fascinating. Human perception of base reality remains remarkably fragile. Recommend documenting stress response for archive. Let me go, Mitchell screamed. Whatever this is, whoever you are, just let me go. Negative, subject has been selected for observation. Protocol requires completion of evaluation cycle. Estimated duration, 473 repetitions of designated loop. Mile marker 214 passed. Mitchell had seen it perhaps 30 times now. 473 more would take hours. He'd go insane. Already his eyes were playing tricks. The desert seemed to flicker between Nevada scrubland and somewhere else. Somewhere with purple sand and a sky the wrong shade of dark. He tried his door handle. Locked. Tried the sleeper cab curtain. Locked. Every exit had been sealed. The air in the cab tasted increasingly metallic, and Mitchell realized the ventilation had stopped. He wasn't getting fresh air anymore. Whatever atmosphere these things had brought with them was seeping into his truck, replacing oxygen with something that smelled like copper and burned plastic. The time began sliding. Mile marker 214 appeared, but Mitchell couldn't remember if he'd just passed it or if hours had elapsed. The convoy trucks swam in and out of focus, sometimes looking almost normal, sometimes revealing their true geometry in ways that made his nose bleed. He found blood on his lips but couldn't remember when it started flowing. Repetition 206, the CB announced. Subject consciousness degrading ahead of projections, adjusting atmospheric composition to maintain viable observation state. The air improved slightly. Mitchell could breathe without his lungs burning, but his thoughts were fragmenting, memories becoming unstuck from chronology. He remembered his daughter's graduation but couldn't place what year. His wife's face kept morphing into a stranger's features. The name of his hometown kept changing in his mind, Billings, then Boise, then something that wasn't a real place at all. Mile marker 214, that blue graffiti tag. The convoy maintained its formation, patient and eternal. Mitchell's hands rested on the useless steering wheel. He'd stopped trying to control anything. The truck drove itself through this prison of repeated space while things that weren't quite human studied him from vehicles that weren't quite trucks. Repetition 468, the CB eventually announced. Mitchell couldn't remember the last few hours or days. Time had become meaningless. He'd eaten at some point, his lunch box was empty but had no memory of food. His logbook remained blank beyond the last entry he'd made before encountering the convoy, 0234 HRS, Highway 50 eastbound, mile 214, clear conditions. Repetition 473, evaluation cycle complete. Subject has provided adequate data, initiating release protocol. The convoy trucks suddenly weren't there. One moment they surrounded Mitchell in their impossible formation. The next he was alone on Highway 50 with empty desert stretching to invisible horizons. His steering wheel connected again. He felt the feedback immediately. The brake pedal functioned. His speedometer showed 63 miles per hour. Everything was normal. Mile marker 215 appeared in his headlights. Mitchell drove in silence for the next hour, checking his mirrors obsessively, waiting for those flat black trucks to return. They didn't. Highway 50 remained empty. His CB radio produced only normal static. His cell phone regained real signal outside of Ely, Nevada, and showed the time as 5:14 a.m. 2 hours and 37 minutes since he'd first seen the convoy. Only 2 hours, it had felt like days. He stopped at the first truck stop, stumbled into the fluorescent brightness, and tried to explain to the night clerk what had happened. The words came out jumbled, incoherent. The clerk thought he was high or drunk and threatened to call the police. Mitchell bought coffee he couldn't drink and sat in a booth shaking until dawn. When he checked his truck, everything seemed normal. The cargo was intact, properly secured, temperature controls functioning. His logbook still showed that last entry at 0234 HRS. No lost time officially. No missing miles. The odometer matched what it should be, accounting for the distance from where he'd encountered the convoy. But there was one change. On his dashboard beneath the GPS unit, someone had placed a small card. White cardstock, no bigger than a business card, with a single line of text printed in precise black letters. Subject 1847, evaluation complete, insufficient data, recommend future observation. Mitchell threw the card away, buried it under coffee grounds and sandwich wrappers in the truck stop garbage. Then he finished his route, delivered his casino equipment, and drove straight home to Montana. He told dispatch he was taking emergency family leave. His wife was confused. There was no family emergency, but she saw something in his eyes that stopped her questions. He didn't drive for 3 months. When he finally went back to trucking, he refused any routes through Nevada. Stayed east of Colorado, west of California, anywhere but Highway 50. His dispatcher thought he was being superstitious. His fellow drivers made jokes about aliens and Area 51. Mitchell didn't care what they thought. He knew what he'd seen. He knew about the convoy that wasn't really trucks, about the mile marker that repeated 473 times, about the things with silver mirror eyes that studied him like bacteria under a microscope. Most of all, he knew about the card. Because even though he'd thrown it away at that truck stop in Ely, he found it again the next morning on his dashboard at home. Same card, same text. And he's found it 7 more times since then, in his glove box, his lunch cooler, his logbook, his mailbox at home. Always the same card, appearing and reappearing, reminding him that somewhere in the dark spaces between Nevada and reality, the convoy is still out there, still running their formation, still conducting their observations, still waiting for Subject 1847 to provide sufficient data. Mitchell doesn't drive at night anymore. Only daylight runs, never past sunset. Because sometimes when dusk comes on and shadows stretch long across empty highways, he sees headlights in his mirrors. 18 sets of headlights, perfectly spaced, approaching in formation. And the CB radio in his new truck, one he bought specifically because it didn't have CB capability, sometimes comes alive with that flat, emotionless voice. Subject 1847 detected. Resuming observation protocol. Stand by for Phase 3. He changes radio frequency, turns the unit off completely, but the voice continues coming from speakers that aren't connected to anything, emerging from the very air itself. Recommend future observation. Recommend future observation. Recommend future observation. Mile marker 214 is still out there on Highway 50. Mitchell knows because he checked on satellite imagery, zooming in until he could see that blue graffiti tag. It's there. Real. Documented by ordinary cameras in ordinary reality. But sometimes, late at night when he can't sleep, Mitchell pulls up that satellite image and stares at it. And if he watches long enough, if he focuses on that tiny blue tag, the image starts moving. The mile marker appears again and again, looping endlessly. And 18 tiny black dots appear on the highway, maintaining perfect formation, waiting for the next driver who'll pass through at exactly the wrong time. Well, the next subject for evaluation. Well, the next observer to be observed. Story 3, the way station that measures SOULS. The sign read "Way Station Open, all trucks must enter," but Carmen Rodriguez had driven this stretch of I-70 through Kansas 64 times in the past year, and there had never been a way station at mile marker 312. The facility materialized from heat shimmer and August humidity, a concrete island emerging from wheat fields that stretched unbroken to every horizon. She checked her logbook, checked her GPS. Nothing indicated any way station within 30 miles. But the portable scales sat there across the northbound lanes, orange cones funneling traffic into a single approach lane. A small building squatted beside the platform, weathered concrete block, flat roof, windows so dark they could have been painted black. Carmen's Volvo VNL automatically began downshifting. The electronic system controlling modern trucks responded to way station signals whether drivers wanted to stop or not. Damn it! She wasn't overweight. Her load of computer components from Denver to Kansas City came in at 79,300 pounds, well under the 80,000 federal limit. But stops added time and she was already running 40 minutes behind schedule. Still, you didn't skip way stations. DOT could pull your license for that. A carman rolled onto the scales at walking speed. The platform should have triggered immediately, displaying her weight on the overhead board. Instead, the display remained blank. She waited, engine idling, watching her mirrors. No other trucks approached. The highway behind her stretched empty despite this being a Friday afternoon when traffic should be heavy. A man emerged from the concrete building. He wore a DOT officer's uniform, dark blue, badge visible on his chest, utility belt with radio and notepad, but something about his walk was wrong. Too smooth, too fluid, like his joints bent in more places than they should. He approached Carmen's driver window and she noticed his nameplate, Inspector 7, not a name, a designation. "Afternoon, ma'am." His voice sounded normal enough. Midwest accent, professional courtesy. "Need you to shut down your engine and step out for inspection." "My permit book's current," Carmen said, passing her documentation through the window. Pre-trip inspection was clean, loads properly secured and underweight. Inspector 7 didn't take the paperwork. "This isn't that kind of inspection, ma'am. Please step out of the vehicle. Bring nothing with you. Leave your personal effects in the cab." Carmen's stomach tightened. What kind of inspection is this exactly? "The kind that's mandatory. Please comply." His smile didn't reach his eyes. Actually, his smile didn't affect his eyes at all. They remained flat, expressionless, like glass marbles pressed into a mannequin's face. She climbed down, leaving her phone, her wallet, everything in the cab. Kansas heat hit her like an oven blast. 96 degrees according to the bank sign. She'd passed 10 miles back, but it felt hotter here, thick and oppressive. The air smelled strange, not agricultural, not industrial, but something else. Something that reminded Carmen of hospitals and dental offices, that sharp chemical scent of sterilization. "Follow me, please." Inspector Seven walked toward the concrete building. Carmen followed, glancing back at her truck sitting on the scales. The weight display overhead still showed nothing, not even zeros, just blank LED panels. Inside, the building was wrong. The exterior suggested a single room, maybe 20 by 20 feet, but the interior stretched much larger, a corridor extending far beyond what the outside dimensions could contain. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, the ballasts making that frequency that got inside your skull. White tile floor, white walls, white ceiling, everything antiseptically clean. "Wait here." Inspector Seven pointed to a door marked Processing Room 7 and walked away, disappearing around a corner that shouldn't exist in a building this size. Carmen stood in the hallway, listening to the fluorescent hum and the sound of her own breathing. No other doors were visible except the one marked for Room 7 and the entrance behind her. She turned to look at the entrance, to see her truck through whatever door or window should be there. The entrance was gone, solid white wall, no door, no exit. "Jesus Christ." Carmen's voice echoed strangely, bouncing back with peculiar resonance. She tried her phone, still in her truck. She'd left everything in her truck like he'd told her to, and now she was trapped in a building that was larger inside than outside with no way out. The door to Processing Room 7 opened by itself. Slow, silent, revealing darkness beyond, not dim light, darkness. The kind that swallows illumination completely. Hello," Carmen's voice shook. "This isn't funny, I want to leave now." No response came, but from that darkness she heard machinery. Mechanical sounds, gears, hydraulics, something that clicked with precise rhythm. Click, 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 like a massive clock counting down. Light bloomed inside Room 7, harsh white light that hurt to look at directly. Carmen squinted, trying to see the room's contents. A chair sat in the center. Not a chair exactly, a metal apparatus designed to hold a human body upright with restraints at wrists, ankles, chest, and neck. Medical equipment surrounded it, or equipment that looked medical but served purposes Carmen couldn't identify. The tubes and wires connected to tanks of fluid, glass chambers. Instruments with LED displays showing readouts in symbols rather than numbers. "Please enter Processing Room 7. Inspector Seven's voice came from speakers in the ceiling. "Refusal to comply will result in involuntary processing." "I'm not getting in that chair. I'm a licensed commercial driver, not some lab rat. You have no authority to." The door at the end of the hallway opened. The one that shouldn't exist. More figures emerged, 5 of them, all wearing the same dot uniform, all with that same too-fluid walk, all with flat, dead eyes. They moved toward Carmen in perfect synchronization. As she ran into Processing Room 7, the door slammed shut behind her with a pneumatic hiss. The chair waited in the center of the room, straps hanging open like hungry mouths. "The subject has entered voluntarily," the ceiling speakers announced, proceeding with standard evaluation protocol. Subject will experience minimal discomfort during measurement phase. Cooperation ensures expedient processing. "Measurement of what?" Carmen backed against the far wall as far from the chair as possible. My truck's not overweight. I showed you my permits. What are you measuring? It's not your vehicle, Ms. Rodriguez. We measure what you carry that isn't recorded in your logbook, what you transport through regulated territory without declaration, what accumulates during years of road travel and never gets properly weighed. One of the glass chambers began filling with liquid, clear at first, then shading toward amber, then darkening to deep red. The fluid moved against gravity, flowing upward from bottom to top. Inside the chamber, symbols appeared, glowing from within the liquid itself. Not writing, pictograms. Images that made Carmen's head hurt because they changed as she looked at them, shifting between multiple meanings. We measure the weight of regret, Ms. Rodriguez, the accumulated mass of guilt, the tonnage of unprocessed trauma and unresolved emotional freight. You've been driving for 11 years, you've hauled cargo across 43 states, but you've never stopped to weigh what you carry internally. It accumulates, it becomes heavy, it requires evaluation. Carmen's legs went weak. She slid down the wall, sitting hard on the white tile floor. This is insane. You can't weigh emotions. You can't measure feelings. Incorrect. We have measured feelings across 17 million subjects. Your species generates measurable emotional mass. Regret weighs more than guilt. Shame outweighs embarrassment by a factor of 6. Lost love is the heaviest burden documented, and you, Ms. Rodriguez, are carrying considerable weight. The red liquid in the chamber reached its apex and stopped. A number appeared on the LED display, but it used a counting system Carmen didn't recognize. Not Arabic numerals, not Roman numerals, something else. The number pulsed, and with each pulse, Carmen felt something pulling at her chest. An actual physical sensation, like hooks embedded in her sternum, tugging rhythmically. Images appeared on the white walls, projected from nowhere, showing scenes Carmen remembered but had worked hard to forget. Her daughter's face, 9 years old, angry because Carmen had missed another recital, another birthday, another parent-teacher conference because of a delivery schedule. Her husband's resignation when he'd finally said, "I can't do this anymore," and she'd chosen the road over marriage counseling. Her mother dying alone in a hospice, while Carmen was 3 states away hauling furniture and promising herself she'd visit next week. "Stop it," Carmen covered her eyes. "You can't do this. This is my mind, my memories. You have no right." "We have every right. You entered regulated territory. You passed through our checkpoint. You consented to inspection when you chose this profession, this life, this pattern of accumulation without release. The weight must be measured. Then decisions must be made about whether you can continue carrying such loads." More chambers filled with liquid, amber and green and deep purple, each one corresponding to different emotional categories Carmen didn't want named. The tugging sensation in her chest intensified, spreading to her throat, her stomach, her spine. It felt like something was being extracted, pulled out through her skin in ways that shouldn't be possible. The subject's emotional mass exceeds standard thresholds, the ceiling voice announced. Recommend offloading procedure. Subject cannot safely continue transport operations while carrying current weight. Offloading, Carmen forced the word out. Her throat felt raw. What does that mean? Your emotional freight will be removed. The memories producing excessive weight will be extracted. You will be lighter, more efficient, better suited for continued operation. The procedure is irreversible but effective. 97% of processed subjects report improved functionality. You want to take my memories, my feelings? That's not processing, that's lobotomy, that's murder of personality. Incorrect terminology. We don't remove the neural structures, we simply reduce the attached emotional mass. You'll remember your daughter, but you won't feel the guilt. You'll remember your marriage ending, but you won't carry the regret. You'll remember your mother dying, but you won't be crushed by the weight of absence. You'll be able to drive without that cargo slowing you down. The chair's restraints began opening and closing like living things, metal joints articulating with wet sounds. The tubes connected to the glass chambers started extending toward Carmen, tipped with needles that gleamed under the harsh white light. I refuse, she stood up, back pressed against the wall. I refuse your procedure. I'll carry my own weight, thank you, it's mine, I earned it. I'm not letting you tea. All I could. A refusal is noted, proceeding to involuntary protocol. The door opened. The five figures entered, moving in that synchronized way. They reached for Carmen with hands that had too many fingers, each digit tipped with something that wasn't quite a nail, wasn't quite a needle, but served both purposes. She fought, screamed, kicked, made contact that should have hurt them but didn't. They were solid but wrong, like hitting foam shaped to resemble flesh. They dragged her to the chair and strapped her in, wrists locked, ankles locked, chest restraint tightened until breathing became difficult. Neck brace clamped her head in place, forcing her to stare straight forward at the chambers of colored liquid. Beginning extraction, the ceiling voice announced. Subject will experience intense sensation during removal. Screaming is common. Unconsciousness is unlikely but possible. Death is extremely rare. Current mortality rate is 0.003%. The needles descended. Carmen felt the first one penetrate her sternum, sliding between ribs with surgical precision, finding her heart, not the physical organ, something else. The emotional core, the place where feelings lived. Cold flooded through her chest cavity, then pain, then something worse than pain, emptiness. A void opening inside her, swallowing pieces of herself. Her daughter's face appeared on the wall again. Carmen tried to feel the guilt, the regret, the love she'd failed to properly express. But the emotions were draining away, pulled out through the needle like venom being extracted. The image remained, but it became flat, meaningless, just pixels on a wall instead of a memory that carried the weight of 11 years of missed connections. No, Carmen forced the word out. No, I need that, I need to feel it, even if it hurts, even if it's heavy, it's mine, it's real, it proves she mattered. It proves I loved her even when I failed her. Irrelevant emotional attachment creates operational inefficiency. You will be improved. More needles penetrated, her throat, her abdomen, behind her eyes, each one finding a reservoir of feeling and draining it. Anger, shame, hope, fear, all of it flowing through tubes into those chambers, being measured, quantified, removed. Carmen watched her internal landscape being excavated, the topography of her emotional life being stripped away until only flatness remained. She tried to remember her daughter's laugh. The sound was there, the auditory memory intact, but it provoked nothing, just information, data without emotional context. Her husband's voice saying, "I love you" on their wedding night, she could recall the words, but they meant nothing now. Her mother's hand holding hers in the hospice, a physical memory stripped of the warmth and grief that had defined it. No, Carmen screamed with everything remaining in her. Give it back, give it all back, I don't care how much it weighs, it's mine. The extraction slowed. The ceiling voice sounded confused. Subject is resisting at neurological level. Unusual. Emotional attachment exceeds predicted strength. Extraction meeting unexpected resistance. Damn right it is. Tears streamed down Carmen's face. You can't have it. You can't measure what I feel and decide it's too heavy. I'm a human being, not a machine. Feelings aren't cargo to be offloaded when convenient. The machines around her began vibrating. The colored liquids in the chambers churned, bubbling. The LED displays flickered, showing symbols that changed too rapidly to track. Something was malfunctioning, or something was working in ways the system hadn't anticipated. The subject is generating emotional mass faster than extraction rate. Impossible. Recommend increasing extraction pressure. The needles pushed deeper. Carmen felt them reaching into places needles couldn't physically go, stretching through dimensions beyond the three her body occupied. But she pushed back, held onto her memories with desperate strength, felt the weight of them, embraced that weight, refused to let these things steal what made her human. I loved my daughter, Carmen shouted. I love her, present tense, and yes, I failed her sometimes, and yes, that hurts, and I'm going to carry that hurt because it reminds me to do better, to call her, to show up, to be present. The weight makes me stronger, not weaker. The chamber with red liquid exploded. Glass shattered, fluid spraying across the white room, staining everything. The ceiling voice made a sound like feedback, a shriek of electronic distress. The needles withdrew suddenly, leaving Carmen gasping in the chair. A evacuation protocol initiated. Subject has corrupted measurement system. Subject has introduced undefined variables. Subject has demonstrated emotional capacity exceeding safe operational parameters. The restraints released. Carmen fell forward off the chair, landing on the tile floor in a pool of red liquid that smelled like copper and regret and ever. Ithing she'd refused to surrender. The five figures backed away from her, their too smooth movements becoming jerky, uncertain. Inspector Seven's voice came through the speakers, distorted now, layered with harmonics. You are free to go, Ms. Rodriguez. Your weight is your own. Transport it as you see fit. But understand you cannot return through this territory. You have been flagged, marked, designated as incompatible with our processing system. Any future attempt to enter regulated space will result in immediate rejection. The white wall dissolved, not opened, dissolved, melting away like snow to reveal the Kansas afternoon beyond. Her Volvo sat on the scales exactly where she'd left it. Through the windshield, Carmen could see her phone on the dashboard, her logbook, her coffee cup in the holder. She stumbled out of the building, through the impossible door into sunlight and heat and air that smelled like wheat fields instead of sterilization. The way station remained solid and real behind her, but as Carmen climbed into her truck, as she started the engine and drove away, she watched in her mirrors as the facility shimmered, faded, became heat distortion. Then nothing. Mile marker 312 passed, just empty wheat fields on both sides of I-70. No way station, no concrete building, no orange cones like it had never existed. But Carmen's chest ached where the needles had penetrated. Her sternum was bruised. She checked later at a rest stop, lifted her shirt in the bathroom and saw the marks. 5 perfect circles arranged around her breastbone, not punctures. Brands, burned into her skin like someone had pressed red-hot coins against her flesh. And in her memories, everything felt sharper now, more vivid. The weight of regret and guilt and love pressed heavier than before, but Carmen welcomed it. She called her daughter that night from a motel in Kansas City, talked for 2 hours, made plans to visit, apologized for every missed moment and heard her daughter's forgiveness and felt the weight of both the failure and the grace. She carries it all still. Every pound of emotional mass. every ounce of accumulated feeling. She drives I-70 regularly, always watching for mile marker 312, always ready to see that impossible way station materialize from heat shimmer. It hasn't appeared again, but sometimes late at night on empty highways, Carmen's CB radio picks up signals, voices discussing subjects and protocols and measurement systems, voices talking about the one who got away, the one who refused processing, the one whose emotional weight exceeded their scale's capacity. The subject Rodriguez flagged marked incompatible. And Carmen smiles when she hears those transmissions, touches the circular scars on her chest, and drives forward carrying the full weight of being human. Heavy, beautiful hers. Story 4. The radio frequency that broadcasts from nowhere. Terry Blackwood found the frequency at 0346 on a Tuesday morning, somewhere between Shreveport and Little Rock on Highway 167. His CB scanner was set to sweep mode, checking all 40 channels in sequence when it locked onto something that shouldn't exist. Channel 3, which is supposed to be open for general communication, was broadcasting. But the signal strength indicator showed impossible readings, stronger than any terrestrial transmission could achieve, peaking into ranges that suggested the source was either immediately next to Terry's International ProStar or broadcasting from orbit. The voice was a woman's, southern accent, professional radio tone. Attention all units on Highway 167 northbound. We have a situation developing at mile marker 43. Repeat situation at marker 43. All drivers are advised to maintain current course. Do not stop, do not investigate, do not acknowledge this transmission. Simply continue driving. Estimated resolution time is 14 minutes from now. Current time is 0347. Terry checked his odometer. He was at mile marker 29, 14 miles from marker 43. At his current speed of 62 miles per hour, he'd reach marker 43 in about 13.5 minutes. Right at the estimated resolution time the broadcast mentioned. His hands tightened on the wheel. 21 years of driving had taught him that weird shit happened on the road sometimes. Drunk drivers, police chases, random wildlife, but this was different. This was specific. This was directed at anyone listening on Channel 3, which meant someone knew there were trucks on this highway right now, heading toward mile marker 43. Terry keyed his microphone. Breaker 3, this is Night Shift requesting clarification on that last transmission. What situation are we talking about? Silence, not static. The channel remained active. He could see the signal indicator still pegging maximum strength, but no response came. The woman's voice didn't acknowledge him. It simply continued. Attention all. Units on Highway 167 northbound. We have a situation developing at mile marker 43. Repeat. Situation at marker 43. Same message, same words, exactly the same. Terry realized it was looping, not live radio, a recording, but the time stamps kept updating. Current time is 0348. Mile marker 31 passed. Terry slowed down, dropping to 55. If there was some situation ahead, he wanted reaction time. The highway stretched empty in both directions, no other trucks, no cars, nothing. Just October darkness and that female voice repeating her warning with mechanical precision. He tried his cell phone. No signal. Expected out here in Louisiana backwater, but still frustrating. Tried switching CB channels. The scanner wouldn't move. It remained locked on Channel 3, displaying that impossible signal strength, broadcasting the looping message. Mile marker 34. His headlights caught something ahead, not on the road, in the sky, lights. Multiple lights arranged in a pattern that made no sense, not aircraft, not towers. They hung stationary about 200 feet above the highway, forming a circle roughly a quarter-mile in diameter. 7 lights. White, but not conventional white, cold, with a blue tint that hurt Terry's eyes when he looked directly at them. Jesus Christ. Terry's voice sounded too loud in the cab. His truck's engine hummed normally. His instruments read normal, but everything felt wrong. The air pressure in the cab dropped, making his ears pop. The temperature gauge showed 72 degrees, but Terry could see his breath misting in front of his face. Mile marker 37. The lights were closer now, and Terry could see they weren't solid. They pulsed in sequence 1 through 7, a pattern that repeated every 4 seconds. And beneath them, in the circle they formed, the highway looked strange. The asphalt appeared darker or textured differently or existing slightly offset from the rest of the road, like looking at something through a lens that wasn't perfectly aligned. The radio message changed. Different voice. Male, no accent, clinically precise. Subject vehicle is approaching designated zone. Prepare for interaction protocol 777. Maintain recording systems. Ensure memory suppression is calibrated for standard human neurology. Who the hell is this? Terry's hand hovered over the CB power switch. Cut the radio, block out these voices. But he needed to hear, needed to know what was happening at mile marker 43. The subject is displaying expected anxiety response. Vitals within normal parameters. Vehicle speed has decreased to 53 miles per hour. Estimate arrival at marker 43 in approximately 7 minutes. They were reading his speed, his vitals. How? Terry looked around the cab, searching for cameras, surveillance equipment, anything that would explain how someone could know his exact speed and physical state. Nothing. Just his normal cab, laptop mount, coffee cups, logbook, paperwork. Mile marker 39. The circle of lights now dominated the sky ahead. They weren't just pulsing anymore. They were descending. Slowly, maintaining their circular formation, dropping toward the highway. The dark patch of altered asphalt grew larger, spreading like a stain. Terry could see the exact moment where normal highway became something else. A distinct line at mile marker 42.5, beyond which the road appeared to exist in slightly different light, as if it were being illuminated by a source that wasn't the sun or his headlights. Terry stomped the brake. His ProStar's air brakes hissed, engaging, and the truck began its juddering slowdown. He wasn't driving into that. No cargo was worth driving into that. Whatever was happening at mile marker 43 could happen without him. The truck didn't slow down. The brake pedal pressed back against Terry's foot with hydraulic resistance, but the speedometer needle didn't drop. 53 miles per hour, constant. His brakes were engaged. He could hear them, feel them, smell the heat building in the brake pads, but the truck maintained speed like something was pulling it forward regardless of friction or resistance. The subject is attempting to stop. Predictable, overriding vehicle control systems. Subject will arrive at designated zone as scheduled. Let me out, Terry's voice cracked. He yanked the steering wheel hard right, aiming for the shoulder, the ditch, anywhere off this highway. The wheel spun uselessly. His ProStar continued straight, perfectly centered in its lane, approaching mile marker 41. He tried his door, locked, tried the sleeper curtain, locked, every exit sealed. The CB radio kept broadcasting updates about his vitals and approach time while the woman's original warning looped underneath. Do not stop, Do not investigate. Do not acknowledge this transmission. Mile marker 42 appeared. Terry crossed into the zone. Moment his truck's front bumper touched that line where the altered asphalt began, everything changed. Sound stopped. Complete silence. His engine still ran, he could see the RPM gauge but produced no noise. His brakes still squealed, he could see smoke rising from the wheels but made no sound. The CB radio voices continued scrolling text across the display screen, but no audio emerged. And the lights descended until they surrounded him. 7 brilliant points arranged in a circle, each one now level with his cab windows, close enough that Terry could see they weren't lights at all. They were apertures, openings in something, windows in objects that his brain couldn't properly process because they existed in more dimensions than 3. Through those apertures, Terry saw figures, watching him, studying him, taking notes maybe, or operating equipment, or performing whatever function things like them performed when observing things like him. They were tall, too tall for the spaces they occupied, as if they existed folded somehow, compressed into dimensions that couldn't contain their full forms. And they had eyes, too many eyes, arranged in patterns across their bodies that made no anatomical sense. Mile marker 43. Terry's truck rolled to a stop, parking itself in the center of the altered zone. The 7 apertures remained positioned around his cab. The figures pressed closer to their windows, those multiple eyes all focusing on Terry with an intensity that felt physical. The CB display showed new text. Beginning interaction. Subject will experience memory extraction. Process is painless. Process is necessary. Subject will not remember extraction once complete. Subject will resume journey with implanted alternative memory of uneventful travel through designated zone. Terry's vision blurred, not tears, something else. His eyes weren't working correctly, as if something was interfering with the neural connection between his retinas and his brain. The cab interior became indistinct, melting into impressions rather than concrete details. And then he wasn't in his cab anymore. He was in a space that was all wrong. Circular, white, too large to exist inside his truck but somehow contained within it. The 7 apertures were now 7 doorways arranged around the perimeter of this impossible room. The figures emerged through those doorways, tall and folded and watching with their terrible proliferation of eyes. Subject Terry Blackwood, one of them said, not speaking. The words appeared in Terry's mind fully formed, bypassing his ears entirely. You are the 416th driver to enter this designated zone. You will provide standard information, then you will leave, then you will forget. This is protocol. What information? Terry tried to speak but wasn't sure if words emerged. His mouth moved. His throat vibrated. But sound might not exist here the way it did in his normal reality. We measure, we catalog. We understand human experience by sampling it directly from consciousness. Your memories, your emotions, your accumulated knowledge, we copy these things, we study these things. Then we return you to your vehicle with no awareness of our interaction. One of the figures approached. Its hand, or the multi-jointed appendage that served the function of a hand, reached toward Terry's head. He tried to back away, couldn't move. His body refused to respond to his commands. The appendage touched his temple and Terry felt something opening, not his skull, his mind. A door in his consciousness swinging wide, allowing access to everything he'd ever thought or felt or remembered. The figure browsed through Terry's life like flipping pages in a book. Childhood in Tennessee, his first truck at 22, marriage, divorce, his daughter's birth, The long nights of driving through empty darkness, every fear, every joy, every mundane moment and significant trauma, all of it exposed and examined and recorded. Interesting, the figure communicated. This one carries significant guilt regarding familial relationships, prioritized occupation over personal connections. Common pattern in your profession. We have documented this in 73% of subjects. Get out of my head. Terry tried to close that door to push the intrusion away, but he had no leverage, no method of resistance. The figure continued its examination, peeling back layers of memory and experience with casual efficiency. This one also carries unresolved trauma from an incident during adolescence. Vehicle accident resulting in peer's death. Subject feels responsible despite lack of actual culpability. Guilt has persisted for 31 years. Influences risk assessment behaviors and decision-making patterns. Stop it, Terry's consciousness thrashed uselessly. Those are mine, private, you can't just. Well, we can, we do. Your concept of privacy is irrelevant to our research purposes. We are cataloging human consciousness, your indi. Visual concerns do not supersede our objective. More figures approached. More appendages touched his head, his chest, his hands. They were copying everything, not just memories, everything. The way Terry processed information, his emotional responses, his fears and hopes and dreams and neuroses. They were duplicating his entire consciousness, creating a perfect replica for their archives. And as they worked, Terry felt pieces of himself being rearranged, altered, adjusted. The memory of this encounter was being deleted in real time, edited out of his experience like cutting scenes from film. He was forgetting while it happened. The circular white room became indistinct. The figures faded. The sensation of violation diminished until it was just a vague unease, then less than that, then nothing. Terry was in his cab. His truck sat at mile marker 43 on Highway 167. His engine idled normally. His instruments read normal. He blinked, confused, trying to remember why he'd stopped. He hadn't stopped. He was moving, 53 miles per hour, cruising through empty Louisiana darkness on a Tuesday morning. His CB scanner sat on channel 3, quiet, displaying normal signal strength. His cell phone showed 3 bars, reception was back. The time was 0401. 15 minutes had passed since mile marker 29, which was about right for traveling 14 miles at his speed. Terry shook his head, trying to clear a strange fog that filled his thoughts. Must be tired. 21 years of driving, you learn to recognize fatigue. He grabbed his coffee, cold now, and drank it anyway, checked his mirrors. Empty highway behind him, mile marker 44 ahead. He continued driving, feeling vaguely uneasy for reasons he couldn't articulate. The night was normal. The highway was normal. Everything was exactly as it should be. But Terry's hands trembled slightly on the wheel and his heart rate remained elevated, and somewhere deep in his hindbrain, alarms were screaming that something had happened. Something significant, something he needed to remember. But the memory wouldn't come. Just that unease. That sense of missing time, missing experience, missing something important. 2 weeks later, Terry's daughter called. They hadn't spoken in 7 months. She'd given up trying to maintain a relationship with a father who was never around, never present even when he was physically there. But she called and they talked, and Terry found himself apologizing, really apologizing, for prioritizing work over family, for missing her childhood, for all the ways he'd failed to show up. He didn't know why he was saying these things, didn't remember consciously deciding to address these issues. The words just emerged and they felt right, and his daughter cried and said she'd been waiting to hear that for a decade. Other changes happened too. Terry started taking therapy. Dealing with the vehicle accident from his adolescence, the guilt he'd carried for 31 years. He couldn't explain why it suddenly felt urgent to address these old wounds. Something had shifted in his brain, reorganizing his priorities, making him confront what he'd avoided. His friends noticed the differences. His dispatcher noticed. Terry was still the same driver, professional, reliable, safe, but something had changed, something fundamental. He had no idea about the 7 lights hovering over Highway 167. No memory of the circular white room or the figures with too many eyes. No awareness that his consciousness had been copied, catalogued, studied, and then carefully edited before being returned to him. But sometimes, late at night when Terry was driving through darkness, his CB scanner would lock onto Channel 3, and a woman's voice would broadcast Southern accent professional tone. "Attention all units, we have a situation developing. Do not stop. Do not investigate. Do not acknowledge this transmission." And Terry would feel that unease again, that sense of missing something. That fog in his thoughts that suggested experience he couldn't access. He'd check his logbook, verify his timestamps, confirm he'd traveled the correct distance in the expected duration. As everything always matched. No missing time, no gaps, no evidence of anything abnormal. Just that voice on Channel 3 warning about situations that Terry had already passed through, already experienced, already forgotten. And somewhere in a space adjacent to Highway 167, in dimensions humans couldn't perceive, the catalog of Terry Blackwood's consciousness sat in archives alongside 415 other entries. Complete records of human experience. Perfect copies. Available for study by entities trying to understand a species they'd been observing for longer than human civilization had existed. The subject 416. Processed successfully. Memory suppression effective. Subject continuing normal operation with minor beneficial alterations to address documented psychological distress. Pro. Itakal successful. Next designated zone, Highway 50, Nevada, mile marker 214. Estimated subjects per cycle 37. Approval granted for continued research. Story 5, The Phantom Load That Gets Heavier. Marcus Chen accepted the dispatch at 9 p.m. on a Friday, December 7, 2022. Simple run, pick up a sealed trailer from a warehouse outside Memphis, deliver it to a distribution center in Tulsa. No details about contents, just fragile materials, maintain constant motion, do not stop except for fuel. The pay was triple his normal rate. That should have been warning enough. The trailer sat in the warehouse lot exactly as described. 53-foot dry van, aluminum sides, unremarkable except for the complete absence of company markings. No logos, no dot numbers, just bare metal painted industrial gray. Marcus backed his Freightliner Cascadia up to the kingpin, heard the fifth wheel lock engage, connected his air lines and electrical, and pulled forward for the tug test. Everything held solid. His weight should have been around 40,000 pounds according to the manifest. His truck handled it fine leaving the lot. By the time Marcus reached the I-40 on-ramp, the weight had changed, not according to the manifest, according to how his truck was handling. The Cascadia was pulling harder, engine working at higher RPMs to maintain speed. His fuel consumption was up. The ride felt heavier, suspension compressing more than it should for a 40,000-pound load. Marcus checked his mirrors. The trailer looked the same, no visual changes, no new cargo loaded. He'd been watching it constantly during the hookup. Nobody could have added weight without him seeing, but his instruments didn't lie. The truck was working harder, something was increasing mass. He drove another 10 miles. The sensation intensified. His Cascadia was now laboring like it was pulling 70,000 pounds. Marcus kept the accelerator floored just to maintain 58 miles per hour on a flat stretch where he should have been coasting at 70. His transmission downshifted repeatedly, searching for power. His coolant temperature climbed toward the warning zone. This doesn't make sense. Marcus grabbed his phone and called dispatch. No answer, tried again, straight to voicemail. He left a message. "This is Chen with that Memphis pickup. Something's wrong with the load weight. It's pulling way heavier than the manifest says. I need to stop and check the cargo." His phone rang immediately. Unknown number. Marcus answered on the truck's Bluetooth. "Yes." "Mr. Chen," male voice, clinical, emotionless. "You were instructed to maintain constant motion. Stopping is not permitted." Who is this? How did you get this number?" "Your cargo is performing as designed. The weight increase is expected and temporary. Continue to your destination. Stopping will void your payment and result in contract termination with extreme prejudice." Extreme prejudice? What kind of? The line went dead. Marcus tried calling back. The number showed as disconnected. He tried dispatch again, still voicemail. His CB radio was silent, nobody else on the road at this hour apparently. 20 miles from Memphis, Marcus's weight felt like 90,000 pounds. He could barely maintain 45 miles per hour. His engine temperature was redlining. His transmission was screaming in 8th gear, desperately trying to move mass that kept increasing. Other trucks were passing him, drivers giving him confused looks as they went by. A Peterbilt pulling doubles overtook him on a slight incline, and the driver's expression said it all. Why is that guy going so slow with a single trailer? Marcus pulled into a rest area. He had to check, had to see what was in the trailer. Maybe cargo had shifted. Maybe the warehouse had loaded incorrectly. Something physical had to explain this. The moment his truck stopped moving, his phone rang again. Same unknown number. "Mr. Chen, you have violated your contract. Consequences will follow. However, you may mitigate penalties by resuming motion within 60 seconds. I need to check my cargo. This weight is going to destroy my transmission. I can't." 53 seconds. Marcus grabbed a flashlight and jumped out of the cab. The trailer sat there in the rest area lighting, looking completely normal. He walked around it. No damage, no visible problems. The rear doors were sealed with a numbered padlock he didn't have the combination for. But there was a small inspection port near the front of the trailer, a panel that could be opened to peek inside without unsealing the rear. Marcus flipped the latch and pulled the panel open. Darkness inside. He shined his flashlight through the port. As empty, the trailer was completely empty. No cargo, no pallets, no boxes. Just 53 feet of hollow aluminum container. Nothing that could possibly weigh anything, let alone the 100,000 pounds or more that his truck W. As now struggling to pull. 37 seconds, Mr. Chen. He looked down. His phone was in his pocket. The voice was coming from the trailer, from the empty trailer, from the darkness inside that his flashlight somehow couldn't fully penetrate. His beam disappeared into that blackness like light being swallowed. And then he saw it. Movement in the darkness, something shifting, something that didn't reflect light but absorbed it. A shape that was difficult to focus on because it seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. It was small, maybe the size of a basketball, but as Marcus watched, it expanded, growing, not physically inflating but increasing in presence, in mass, in weight. Taking up more space not by becoming larger but by becoming denser, heavier, more real. 21 seconds. Marcus slammed the inspection port closed and ran back to his cab, started the engine, released the brakes, pulled out of the rest area with tires squealing. His transmission complained loudly as he accelerated, the weight now feeling like 120,000 pounds. The Cascadia could barely move. He got up to 37 miles per hour and couldn't go faster. Other trucks flew past him. Cars honked as they swerved around him. Acceptable, the voice said from his phone, from his radio, from the very air in the cab. You stopped for 93 seconds. Penalty has been assessed. Continue to destination. What is that thing? Marcus's hands shook on the wheel. What am I hauling? It is difficult to explain in terms your physics can accommodate. Condensed matter from outside your dimensional framework. It accumulates mass as it adjusts to your reality's physical laws. By the time you reach Tulsa, it will weigh approximately 400,000 pounds. Your vehicle cannot support such weight. You will drive until mechanical failure occurs. Then consequences will proceed. 400,000 pounds. Marcus's voice went high. That's impossible. The road can't support that. My truck can't move that. The axles will break. The fifth wheel will fail. Yes, all those things will happen, eventually, but you will continue attempting motion until they do. This is the experiment. We are studying material stability during dimensional transition. Your vehicle provides useful data about stress thresholds. Marcus looked at his mirrors. The trailer appeared normal, just aluminum sides and a gray paint job, but he could feel the weight. His Cascadia was groaning, every component strained beyond design limits. His speedometer showed 31 miles per hour now, dropping 28, 24. On flat highway, barely moving, engine roaring at maximum RPM. He tried his radio. Breaker 19, this is Chen, I've got an emergency situation. My truck is… Static drowned his words. Not normal static, structured static. Interference that felt deliberate. No external communication is permitted during transit. You accepted this contract. You will fulfill its terms or face penalties. I didn't accept this, I didn't know. You said it was fragile materials, you said. You accepted adequate compensation without asking sufficient questions. Standard human behavior. Greed overcomes caution. We have documented this pattern in 89% of subjects. Subjects, not drivers, not contractors, subjects. Marcus's fuel gauge dropped rapidly. The engine was burning diesel at catastrophic rates, trying to move impossible weight. He'd fueled up in Memphis with 300 gallons. Now he was down to half tanks and he'd only traveled 40 miles. At this rate, he'd run out of fuel before reaching Oklahoma. Fuel depletion is accounted for in experimental parameters, the voice said, apparently reading his thoughts. Provided you maintain motion, fuel will be supplemented through non-standard means. Your tanks will not empty below critical level. Marcus checked his mirrors again. His fuel gauge started climbing. Quarter tanks, half tanks, three-quarter tanks, full. He just watched his fuel tank capacity double without stopping, without pumping, without any physical source. The fuel was simply appearing, filling tanks according to the thing in the trailer's requirements. His speedometer showed 18 miles per hour, dropping. The trailer's weight felt like it was approaching 200,000 pounds now. Marcus could hear his axles grinding, bearings screaming under loads they were never designed for. His fifth wheel connection was making terrible sounds, metal stress plates warping. His suspension had compressed completely, frame nearly touching axles. A sign appeared, Tulsa 387 miles. At 18 miles per hour, that would take 21 and a half hours. Marcus's hands ached from gripping the wheel. His shoulders burned. His eyes felt like they had sand in them. He'd been driving for 3 hours and traveled 60 miles. 327 miles remained. I can't drive for 20 ons. The hours, Marcus said to the empty air. Federal regulations mandate rest breaks. I'm required to. Your regulations do not apply to this contract. You will drive until arrival or mechanical failure. Sleep is unnecessary. You will find your alertness artificially maintained. Marcus realized the voice was right. He wasn't tired. Should have been exhausted. He'd already been driving 12 hours before accepting this dispatch, but he felt wide awake. Wired. His heart rate was elevated, adrenaline coursing, but no fatigue. Something was keeping him conscious and alert against all natural processes. Mile marker 213. His speedometer showed 14 miles per hour. The trailer weight felt like 300,000 pounds. Impossible weight. His truck shouldn't be moving at all. But it crawled forward, engine screaming, every mechanical system operating beyond failure points. And then he heard the sound. From behind him, from the trailer, a creaking noise, metal flexing. The aluminum sides were bulging outward, deforming under pressure from inside, not rapidly, slowly, but visibly changing shape. The thing in the trailer was expanding or increasing density or doing whatever it did to accumulate more weight, and the container could no longer hold its form. A structural failure of container is within acceptable parameters, the voice stated. Cargo will remain secured through non-physical means. Continue. The bulging intensified. Marcus watched in his mirrors as the trailer's sides pushed outward, creating a grotesque pregnant shape. The roof bent upward, the floor sagged toward the road. The entire trailer was becoming a distorted egg shape, held together not by rivets and welds but by something else. Something that bent physics to its needs. His speedometer showed 9 miles per hour. The Cascadia was barely moving. Marcus could feel the tires deforming under the load, rubber compressing, steel belts flexing. His suspension was bottomed out completely. He was driving on the bump stops, frame rails scraping pavement, leaving sparks behind him. Approaching first cascade failure point, the voice announced. Subject's fifth wheel connection will fail in approximately 14 minutes. Experimental data will be recorded. Subject will experience significant trauma during disconnect event. Medical intervention is not authorized. I don't want to die for your experiment, Marcus screamed. Let me stop, let me disconnect, I'm not doing this. You have already done this. Motion cannot be stopped until arrival or mechanical failure completes the transport cycle. Death is a possible outcome. We acknowledge your fear. It provides useful data about human stress response during catastrophic vehicle failure. Marcus's fifth wheel made a sound like a gunshot, metal fracturing. The connection plate cracking under 400,000 pounds of impossible weight. His truck lurched. The trailer shifted backward 3 inches, settling into a new position as the fifth wheel components failed partially. He had minutes, maybe less. When the fifth wheel let go completely, the trailer would drop onto his cab. 400,000 pounds crushing down, no survival possible. His Freightliner would be flattened and Marcus would be pulverized inside. He grabbed his door handle, jumped, let the truck drive itself into whatever disaster waited, but the door wouldn't open, locked from the outside. He tried the sleeper curtain. Locked, emergency window locked, every exit sealed. The subject cannot abandon vehicle. Contract requires completion, maintain position, accept outcome. The fifth wheel made another cracking sound. Marcus felt the trailer settling lower, the connection disintegrating in stages. His mirrors showed the trailer's deformed shape looming over his cab, hundreds of thousands of pounds suspended by failing metal. And then something changed. The weight stopped increasing, actually decreased. Marcus felt his truck accelerating slightly up to 12 miles per hour, then 15. His engine RPMs dropped from red line to merely strained. The trailer in his mirrors began deflating, resuming normal rectangular shape. Dimensional stabilization achieved, the voice stated. Cargo has successfully transitioned to your reality's physical framework. Weight is now fixed at 97,400 pounds. Vehicle stress has decreased to survivable levels. Subject will continue to Tulsa without further cascade failure. Estimated arrival time, 6 hours 32 minutes. Marcus nearly sobbed with relief. 97,000 pounds was overweight, illegal without special permits, but it was survivable. His truck could handle it, the fifth wheel might hold. He might actually reach Tulsa alive. The voice didn't speak again. Marcus drove in silence, maintaining 20 miles per hour, listening to every sound his truck made. The fifth wheel connection held. His suspension held. His transmission held. Everything stayed Tojith. Either through sheer luck, or because the thing in the trailer had decided to allow it. 6 hours and 41 minutes later, 9 minutes over the estimated arrival time, Marcus pulled into the Tulsa Distribution Center. 3 a.m., empty lot. A single warehouse door open, light spilling out. A figure stood in the doorway. Tall, too tall, proportions that weren't quite right. Marcus's phone spoke one final time. Back trailer to receiving door. Disconnect. Leave trailer, drive away. Your payment has been transferred. Your memory of this event will fade within 72 hours. You will remember only a standard delivery. Successful, uneventful. This is the conclusion of your contract. He backed the trailer to the door. The too tall figure guided him with hand signals, and Marcus tried not to look directly at it, tried not to see the joints that bent wrong or the fingers that numbered 7 on each hand. He disconnected his air lines, released his fifth wheel, pulled forward, leaving the deformed trailer sitting at the warehouse. In his mirrors, he watched the too tall figure enter the trailer. Watched as light from the warehouse doorway stopped at the trailer's threshold, unable to penetrate the darkness inside. Watched as something emerged from that darkness, floating out without visible means of support. A sphere, black, completely black, absorbing all light that touched it, small again, basketball-sized, just as it had been when Marcus first saw it. The thing that had weighed 400,000 pounds now looked light as air, as the figure carried it into the warehouse. The warehouse door closed. Marcus drove away. By morning, he couldn't quite remember the details. Something about a delivery to Tulsa. Standard run, good pay, nothing unusual. His logbook showed the hours. His bank account showed the payment $9,400 for a single overnight delivery. Excellent money for standard work. His mechanic commented on the unusual wear to his fifth wheel when Marcus brought the truck in for routine service 2 days later. "Looks like you pulled some seriously heavy loads recently," the mechanic said. "You doing overweight runs?" "No," Marcus replied, and he believed it. "Just normal stuff, 50,000 pounds, nothing unusual." The mechanic shrugged and replaced the worn components. Marcus's truck was good as new. But sometimes, late at night when Marcus drives past Memphis, his phone rings from unknown numbers. And when he answers, when he can't stop himself from answering, he hears that clinical, emotionless voice. "Mr. Chen, additional contracts are available. Compensation rates have increased. Are you interested in further opportunities?" And Marcus always says no, always refuses, always hangs up. But the calls keep coming, every week, every few days, sometimes multiple times per day, unknown numbers, that same voice, that same offer. And Marcus knows that eventually, probably soon, he'll say yes, because the money is excellent, because he needs the money, because memory fades and the details of that December night are already indistinct, and surely it wasn't that bad. Surely he's exaggerating in his vague recollections. Surely next time will be different, easier, standard, normal. The voice on the phone assures him this is true, and Marcus wants to believe it, needs to believe it. So he'll accept another contract eventually, another sealed trailer, another payload that weighs more than physics allows, another experiment conducted by things that aren't bound by human limitations or concerns. The subject Chen, available for future observation, demonstrates excellent stress tolerance, high probability of survival through multiple transport cycles, recommended for continued utilization. The contracts will keep coming, and Marcus will keep answering, until one day the fifth wheel finally fails completely, until the weight becomes truly unsurvivable, until the thing in the trailer decides it no longer needs subject Chen's services. But that day hasn't arrived yet, so Marcus drives his routes, accepts his dispatches, tells himself that everything is normal, standard, safe. And his phone keeps ringing. Unknown numbers, promising excellent compensation, requiring only that he maintain constant motion, requiring only that he not ask questions, requiring only that he transport cargo he cannot see, hauling weight that shouldn't exist, serving purposes he doesn't want to understand. Just drive, just deliver, just accept the money. And everything else is irrelevant. The story 6, the truck stop that only exists at 3:33 a.m. Bethany Cortez saw the sign emerge from January fog at 3:31 a.m. on Route 12 through Montana. ROSIE stop food fuel rest next right. She'd driven this route monthly for 7 years, and there was no truck stop on Route 12. Just empty Montana wilderness for 140 miles between actual civilization. But her fuel gauge showed a quarter tank and the sign was TH. Is air impossible but real, reflecting her headlights with promise of warmth and diesel. As she took the exit, a narrow access road wound through pine trees thicker than any forest she'd seen in this region. Her GPS showed her blue dot leaving Route 12, then flickering, then displaying location unavailable in text she'd never seen before. The trees pressed closer. Then the forest opened, and Rosie's stop sat in a clearing like something from a postcard about Americana that never quite existed. Retro architecture, 1950s aesthetic, chrome and neon. A diner with red vinyl booths visible through large windows. 6 fuel pumps under an overhang lit by lights that buzzed with that specific frequency fluorescent tubes made when they were old. 2 other trucks were parked in the lot, a Kenworth W900 and a Mack Anthem. Both looked well-maintained, both idling, both empty of drivers. Bethany checked her watch. 3:33 a.m. She'd taken 2 minutes to drive from Route 12 to this clearing. Her fuel gauge still showed a quarter tank. Her odometer showed 943,716 miles normal. Everything seemed normal except for the existence of this place that shouldn't exist. She parked next to the Kenworth, shut down her International LT and grabbed her wallet. The cold hit her when she opened the door. Montana January, well below zero, but warmth radiated from the diner. She could smell coffee, real coffee, strong and fresh, and something cooking. Bacon, maybe, or sausage. Her stomach growled. She'd been driving 11 hours with only gas station snacks for sustenance. The diner door chimed when she entered. Old-fashioned bell attached to the frame. The interior matched the exterior's retro aesthetic perfectly. Chrome fixtures, red vinyl, black and white tile floor. A jukebox in the corner playing something instrumental and vaguely familiar. And behind the counter, a woman in her 60s with gray hair pulled into a bun, wearing a pink waitress uniform that belonged in a movie about the past. "A welcome to Rosie's, honey." The woman smiled, and it seemed genuine, warm. "Sit anywhere you like, coffee." Please." Bethany slid into a booth. "I didn't know there was a truck stop on Route 12, must be new." "So we've been here forever." Rosie had to be Rosie poured coffee into a thick ceramic mug. "Just not always visible, depends on timing. You came at the right moment." Bethany wrapped her hands around the mug, absorbing warmth. The right moment. 3:33 a.m., that's when we're open, only then, rest of the times we're elsewhere. Rosie pulled out an order pad. "What can I get you?" Elsewhere, that word hung in the air with significance Bethany didn't want to examine. She ordered scrambled eggs, bacon, toast. Rosie wrote it down and walked toward the kitchen, and Bethany noticed the other 2 drivers sitting in booths across the diner. She'd somehow missed them initially. One was a man in his 70s, weathered face, wearing a trucker cap with a logo Bethany didn't recognize. The other was younger, maybe 30, Hispanic, staring at his coffee with intense focus. Neither looked at Bethany. Neither acknowledged her presence. "Excuse me," Bethany called to them. "Either of you know how long this place has been here?" The older man looked up. His eyes were strange, not the wrong color, not deformed, just strange. Like they'd seen too much and couldn't properly focus on the present anymore. "You're new, first-timer, don't worry. The food is excellent. Rosie never disappoints." "But when did this open? I drive Route 12 all the time and I've never." "It's always been here." The younger man didn't look up from his coffee. "Always will be, but only at 3:33, only in the fog, only when certain conditions aligned, you'll learn." Bethany felt cold despite the diner's warmth. "Learn what?" Neither man answered. Rosie emerged from the kitchen with a plate of food that was ready impossibly fast. Scrambled eggs perfectly cooked. Bacon crispy exactly how Bethany liked it. Toast buttered, still warm. It smelled incredible. "Eat up, honey," Rosie said. "You'll need your strength, long night ahead." "I'm only here for maybe 30 minutes, just fuel and food, then back on the road. I've got a delivery in Billings by noon." Rosie's smile didn't change, but something in her eyes did. A sadness maybe, or pity. Of course, honey, whatever you need. Bethany ate. The food was perfect. Best meal she'd had in months, years maybe, each bite satisfied in ways that went beyond physical hunger. She felt herself relaxing, tension draining away, the stress of 11 hours of night driving evaporating. The coffee was equally perfect. Rich, strong, exactly the temperature she preferred. As she finished eating and checked her watch, 3:33 a.m. Still, she'd been in the diner for at least 20 minutes, ordered, received food, eaten completely. But her watch stubbornly displayed 3:33. She checked her phone. Same time, 3:33 a.m., not frozen, the seconds ticked forward. But when the display reached 3:33 and 59 seconds, it rolled over to 3:33 and 0 seconds. Time was looping, stuck. Rosie, Bethany's voice came out tight. What's happening with the time? This is the moment we exist in, honey, 3:33 a.m. It's always 3:33 here, that's the nature of this place. Outside, time moves normally. Inside, we're anchored to this specific minute. That's impossible. And yet, Rosie refilled Bethany's coffee without being asked. You're experiencing it. The question isn't whether it's possible. The question is why you're here, what brought you to this specific moment, what you need that only 3:33 can provide. The older man stood up from his booth. He moved stiffly like his joints were failing. I've been here for 37 years, he said. Outside time, in here it's been one moment, but I remember every loop, every repeat of this minute. I'm Billy Hutchins. I drove a Peterbilt 359 back when they were new, made a wrong turn onto Route 12 in January 1986. Found Rosie's stop, came inside, and I've never been able to leave. Bethany stood up so fast her coffee sloshed. That's insane. You can't be trapped here. Just walk out, drive away. Billy shook his head. Try it, you'll see. The exit is right there. Door works fine, but when you walk through it, you're walking back in. The loop isn't just temporal, it's spatial. This place is closed, contained, separate from the Route 12 you came from. The younger man finally looked up. Gabriel Reyes, I've been here 14 months or 1 minute depending on perspective. I thought Billy was lying at first, tried everything to leave, broke windows, tried climbing out, tried forcing the door to stay open. Nothing works. We're stuck at 3:33 a.m. in Rosie's stop and the universe outside has moved on without us. Bethany ran for the door, pushed through it. Cold hit her Montana January night. Her International LT sat in the lot exactly where she'd parked it. The Kenworth and Mack still idled nearby. She could see Route 12 access road leading back through the trees. Freedom was right there. As she walked toward her truck, 10 steps, 20. The clearing seemed larger than before, 30 steps, 40. Her truck wasn't getting closer. She ran, full sprint. The International remained the same distance away no matter how fast she moved. And then she was pushing through the diner door again, entering from the cold into warmth, completing a circuit she didn't remember starting. Billy and Gabriel sat in their booths. Rosie stood behind the counter. All of them watched Bethany with that same expression, sadness mixed with pity. It takes everyone differently, Rosie said. Some accept it quickly. Others fight for what feels like years, but the outcome is the same. 3:33 a.m. is where you are now, where you'll always be. I'm sorry, honey, I don't make the rules, I just serve the coffee. Bethany slumped into her booth. Why, what is this place? Some kind of hell? Purgatory? Neither, both, depends on perspective. Rosie poured more coffee. This is a moment that fell out of time. 3:33 a.m. on January 16, 1957. Something happened here, something significant. The moment became stuck, separated from the normal flow. And now it collects people. Travelers who arrive at the exact wrong time find themselves here, or the exact right time. Again, perspective. Well, what happened in 1957? Rosie's expression darkened. I died here, car accident on Route 12. My husband and I were driving to our daughter's wedding, patch of ice, lost control, crashed. It was 3:33 a.m. when my heart stopped, and somehow I didn't leave. I stayed in this moment. And eventually, this diner manifested around me, built from my memories of truck stops I'd visited, places that felt safe, warm. The moment needed a structure, and I provided the template. Oh, you're a ghost. And I'm what remains when someone refuses to move forward through time. I'm anchored here, and over the decades, others have joined me. Billy, Gabriel, others before them who eventually faded. The moment can only hold so many consciousnesses before older ones get pushed out, erased, forgotten. Billy nodded. There were 3 drivers here when I arrived in '86. I remember 2 of them vaguely. The third is just a blur now. Names gone, faces gone. They existed here for years, then simply stopped existing, replaced by newer arrivals. The moment has limited capacity. Gabriel stared at his coffee again. So we're temporary, even our trapped existence is temporary. Eventually, we'll be erased to make room for whoever finds this place next. That's the real horror, not that we're stuck and will be forgot. Oh, then, Bethany felt panic rising. No, no, I won't accept this. There has to be a way out, some trick, some method. People don't just get trapped in time. They do. Rosie refilled cups that never seemed to empty. More often than you'd think, the universe has thin spots, places where the normal rules don't apply. 3:33 a.m. is a powerful number, symmetrical, prime, mystically significant across cultures. It's a crack in time, and Route 12 crosses that crack right here. Most people drive past without noticing. But sometimes, when fog is right and the moon is new and a traveler is in exactly the right state of mind, they see the exit. They stop, they enter, and they join us. Bethany tried her phone, no signal. Of course, no signal. She tried her radio, static. She tried every electronic method of communication her devices offered. Nothing worked. She was isolated in this impossible moment with 3 other people trapped in various states of acceptance and despair. Days passed, or no time passed, or the same minute repeated 60 billion times. Bethany lost track. She slept in her truck or tried to sleep, but sleeping in a moment that never progresses is strange. She'd close her eyes, feel herself drifting, then wake up and her watch still said 3:33 a.m. No sense of duration, no refreshment from rest, just closing eyes and opening them in the same instant. She tried everything Billy and Gabriel had already tried. Breaking windows, forcing doors, climbing, digging, running into the forest until the trees became too dense, then finding herself back at the diner without remembering returning. The loop was complete, perfect, inescapable. Gabriel talked sometimes about his wife, his children, the life he'd left behind when he stopped at Rosie's. They've moved on by now, he said. 14 months, they probably had my funeral, sold my truck, my wife remarried maybe. I'm dead to them, but I'm not dead, I'm just here, eternally here. Billy talked less. He'd been in the loop for so long that his memories of the outside world were fading. He couldn't clearly remember his wife's face anymore. Couldn't recall his children's names with certainty. The loop was erasing his past, making room for more repetitions of this single moment. Rosie just served coffee and cooked food that appeared from a kitchen that might not actually exist. She was kind, patient, eternally welcoming, but hollow. A ghost going through motions because she couldn't conceive of any alternative. And Bethany felt herself beginning to fade, not physically, mentally. The sharp edges of her personality were softening. Her memories of the life before Rosie's stop became less vivid. Her sense of urgency decreased. Fighting the loop required energy that she didn't have an unlimited supply. Eventually, she knew she'd end up like Billy, vague about her past, existing in a permanent present, waiting to be erased when capacity was reached. Then, after an unmeasurable duration, something changed. A fourth truck appeared in the lot, a Volvo VNL newer model driven by a woman in her 40s with auburn hair. She entered the diner at 3:33 a.m., saw the other trapped drivers, and her face went through the same progression Bethany remembered from her own arrival. Confusion, denial, fear, despair. "A welcome to Rosie's, honey," Rosie said with that same warm smile. "Coffee." The new woman, Jennifer Hale, she introduced herself, went through the same cycle, tried to leave, failed, raged, cried, eventually accepted temporary defeat while plotting escape attempts. But her arrival changed something for Bethany, because when Jennifer appeared, another presence disappeared. Billy Hutchins. One moment he was sitting in his booth drinking coffee, staring at nothing. The next moment the booth was empty, no transition, no farewell, just gone, erased, replaced. "Well, what happened to Billy?" Bethany asked Rosie. "A capacity was reached. 4 consciousnesses is the limit. When Jennifer arrived, someone had to leave. Billy was oldest. He was already fading. Now he's faded completely. Back into time or out of it. I'm not certain of the destination." Gabriel looked shaken. "I'm next then. When the 5th person arrives, I'll be erased. How much time do I have?" Time is meaningless here, but an external duration could be days, could be decades. No way to predict when the next traveler will find the exit. Bethany felt desperation renewed. She didn't want to wait for a 5th arrival and see whether she or Gabriel was erased. She'd been here longer than Jennifer, but shorter than Gabriel. The math was unclear. And beyond that, she didn't want to fade the way Billy had. Didn't want her life reduced to a vague presence in an eternal moment before being snuffed out completely. She studied the diner obsessively, looking for cracks, anomalies, some flaw in the loop she could exploit, and eventually she found it, the jukebox in the corner. It played instrumental music continuously, the same song actually looping just like the moment, but the song had a skip, a glitch. At 2 minutes and 17 seconds, it jumped back to 1 minute and 43 seconds before continuing. A subloop within the loop, an imperfection in the moment's structure. Bethany approached the jukebox during one of her inspection tour. She studied it. The machine looked authentic vintage Wurlitzer from the 50s, but when she looked closely, she saw the record inside wasn't spinning. The music played without physical mechanism, manifested directly from nothing. As she pressed buttons on the jukebox, nothing changed. The same instrumental track continued with its distinctive skip. She tried unplugging the machine. The cord disconnected easily, but the music continued playing. Power source was irrelevant. Then Gabriel joined her. "You found it," he said quietly. "I found it months ago, thought maybe it was something, a way out, but I couldn't figure out how to use it." "I'll use it how?" "On the skip, it proves the moment isn't perfect. There's a flaw, and flaws can be exploited in theory." They experimented together. Jennifer joined eventually. All 3 of them studying the jukebox, timing the skip, looking for patterns. Rosie watched from behind the counter but said nothing, just refilled coffee and smiled sadly. At some unmeasurable point later, Bethany had an idea. What if the skip is an exit? What if during that moment, between 2 minutes 17 seconds and 1 minute 43, there's a gap, a chance to step outside the main loop? How would we do that? Jennifer asked. The music skips, but we don't. Time doesn't change for us. Maybe it does. Maybe we just haven't noticed because we're not paying attention during that exact instant. Next time the skip happens, we all need to be completely focused. Aware, present, maybe awareness is the key. They synchronized their attention to the jukebox, waited for the skip. 2 minutes 17 seconds approached. Bethany felt herself tensing, focusing every bit of consciousness on the present moment. The skip happened. And something shifted. For one instant, less than a second, Bethany felt the loop's grip loosen. Felt herself existing in real time rather than trapped time. The diner flickered, became translucent. Through the walls, she saw darkness, not night, absence, the void outside the moment. Then the instant passed. The loop reasserted itself. 3:33 a.m., Rosie's stop, coffee and warmth and eternal prison. But they'd felt it. All three drivers had experienced that momentary freedom. Again, Gabriel said, we do it again, and next time we move. During the skip, we run for the door. Maybe that instant of looseness is enough. They tried. Next skip, all three drivers sprinted for the exit. The door seemed to recede as they approached, stretching away, but they kept running, through the flickering diner, into the void beyond, into darkness that wasn't cold or warm, wasn't anything, just pure absence. And then Bethany was standing on Route 12. Her international LT sat on the shoulder, hazards flashing. No diner, no clearing, just empty Montana highway in January darkness. Her watch showed 3:47 a.m. 14 minutes had passed since she'd first seen the exit sign for Rosie's stop. Gabriel stood next to her, looking shocked. Jennifer was on the other side of his truck, equally stunned. They'd escaped. Used the flaw in the moment to slip through, back into real time, into the world that had continued flowing while they'd been trapped. Did that happen? Jennifer's voice shook. Please tell me that happened and we're not just hallucinating another layer of trap. Bethany checked her phone. Signal had returned. Messages were flooding in, missed calls from dispatch, texts from her sister, normal life resuming. Real, this was real. They drove away. All three trucks, one after another, speeding down Route 12 like death itself was pursuing them. Maybe it was. Maybe the moment would reach out, reclaim what it had lost. But miles passed and nothing pursued. They reached the next town, stopped at a real truck stop, chain franchise, harsh lighting, diesel smell, everything corporeal and mundane and beautiful, and sat together drinking coffee that tasted mediocre compared to Rosie's but was real. Actually real. We can't tell anyone, Gabriel said eventually. They'll think we're insane. We were there for different durations, Jennifer added. I felt like days, you two experienced longer, but outside only minutes passed. How do we explain that? They couldn't, so they agreed to silence. Exchanged contact information. Promised to check in with each other monthly to confirm they were still out, still free, still existing in real time. Bethany continued her delivery to Billings, made her noon deadline easily. Life resumed, normal, regular, real. But sometimes, when she drives Route 12 through Montana in January fog, Haney sees the sign, ROSIE stop food fuel rest next right. It appears in her headlights for just a moment, then vanishes. The exit isn't there, the access road doesn't exist, she's safe, still free, still moving through time normally. But she knows the moment is still there. 3:33 a.m., eternal and waiting. Rosie still serves coffee. The jukebox still plays with its distinctive skip, and somewhere, somehow, Billy Hutchins is completely gone, erased so thoroughly that Bethany can barely remember what he looked like. The loop protecting itself by removing evidence of those who escape or fade. Gabriel calls monthly, confirms he's still out, still real. Jennifer does the same. They're survivors of something that shouldn't exist, and they carry that knowledge quietly, privately, never speaking of it except to each other. But Bethany wonders sometimes about the next travelers, the people who'll see that exit sign and stop, seeking fuel and warmth. The people who'll enter Rosie's at 3:33 a.m. and find themselves trapped in a moment that never ends. And she wonders if she should warn people somehow, post online about the danger, tell other drivers to avoid Route 12 on foggy January nights. But who would believe her, and would warnings even help? The moment chooses its victims according to rules nobody understands. Awareness might not protect anyone, might even make them more vulnerable. So Bethany stays silent and drives her routes and avoids Route 12 in January whenever possible. And when she can't avoid it, when dispatch sends her through Montana in winter darkness, she watches for that sign, watches for that exit, watches for the moment that would love to reclaim her. The 3:33 a.m. is a powerful time, a crack in reality. And somewhere in Montana, Rosie still pours coffee and smiles sadly at travelers who arrived at the wrong moment and stayed forever. Or until the skip, until awareness and desperation combine to crack the crack, until escape becomes possible for those brave or desperate enough to try. But most don't escape, most become Billy, faded, erased, forgotten. And the loop continues, eternal, patient, waiting for 3:33 a.m. to arrive again and again and again in an infinite moment that refuses to end. Story 7, the hitchhiker who's already in your truck. Angela Morrison was alone when she left Cheyenne at midnight, hauling auto parts to Denver, completely alone. She'd done her walk-around inspection, checked the trailer seal, verified the load was secure. Nobody had approached her truck. Nobody had asked for a ride. She'd climbed into her Peterbilt 579's cab, locked both doors from the inside, and pulled out of the distribution center by herself. By 12:43 a.m. on I-25 southbound, Angela had a passenger. She noticed him during a routine mirror check. A man sitting in her sleeper berth, visible through the partially open curtain, middle-aged, wearing a denim jacket, dark hair, expressionless face. Just sitting there on her bed, hands folded in his lap, staring at the back of her head. Angela's heart stopped. She was doing 72 miles per hour and a stranger was in her truck. Had been in her truck for how long? Since Cheyenne? Had he been hiding in the sleeper during her inspection? But she'd checked. She always checked. Nobody could have gotten past her. She grabbed the can of pepper spray she kept in the door pocket and spun in her seat. Who the hell are you? How did you get in here? The man didn't react, didn't blink, just sat there with that blank expression, staring through her rather than at her. I said, who are you? Angela's voice went shrill. She was alone on the highway with an intruder miles from help, moving at highway speed. She couldn't stop safely, couldn't pull over without risk. Answer me or I'm calling the police. The man's mouth moved. No sound emerged initially. Then, faintly like audio from a distant source, you picked me up outside Rollins. Don't you remember? You stopped at the rest area. I asked for a ride. You said yes. I didn't stop at Rollins. I drove straight through. I've been on the road for 43 minutes without stopping. You stopped, mile marker 215. You saw me standing in the parking area. You felt sorry for me. You unlocked the passenger door and told me to get in. We've been driving together for 30 miles. As Angela's memory contradicted everything he said, she'd passed the Rollins rest area without slowing. Hadn't seen anyone, hadn't stopped. But the man sat there with absolute certainty, insisting on a reality that didn't match hers. She grabbed her phone, dialed 911. The call connected and she heard ringing, but before anyone answered, the man spoke again. You won't tell them about me. You'll say you're fine. You'll say it was a pocket dial, because deep down you remember picking me up. You remember agreeing to give me a ride. Well, that's insane. I never. So 911, what's your emergency? Well, the dispatcher's voice came through clear. As Angela opened her mouth to scream for help, to report an intruder, to beg for police intervention. But different words emerged. Sorry, pocket dial, I'm fine, just driving, sorry to bother you. Are you sure, ma'am? You sound distressed. I'm fine, really sorry. Angela hung up. Horror flooded through her. She hadn't meant to say those words. Hadn't chosen them. They'd simply come out of her mouth like someone else was controlling her speech. The man in the sleeper smiled slightly. See, you remember, part of you remembers, you picked me up, you invited me into your truck, and now I'm here and there's nothing strange about that at all. As Angela tried to think, tried to access her memories of the past hour. Rollins rest area, had she stopped? The memory felt slippery, uncertain. She remembered driving past. But she also remembered, faintly, like recalling a dream, pulling into the rest area, seeing a figure in the parking lot, feeling sympathy, unlocking the door. No, Angela shook her head violently. No, that's not real. You're doing something to my head, planting false memories. I never picked you up. Then how am I here? The man's voice remained calm, reasonable. Trucks don't just spontaneously generate passengers. I didn't materialize from nothing. You let me in, you made the choice, you're responsible for my presence. As Angela's hands shook on the steering wheel, she had to get this thing, this man, this intruder, whatever he was, out of her truck. She spotted a way station ahead, closed for the night but with lights still on. Security cameras, maybe witnesses, maybe help. She took the way station exit, pulling onto the scales even though they weren't active, killed her engine, grabbed her phone and pepper spray and kicked open her door in one motion, stumbling out onto the pavement. Freedom, space, distance from the intruder. She ran to the way station office and pounded on the door. Locked, nobody inside, but cameras were visible, mounted on the building corners, recording. She waved at them frantically. I need help. There's a man in my truck. I don't know how he got there. No response came. The building remained dark and silent. Angela turned back toward her Peterbilt. The sleeper berth was empty. She could see through the windshield, see the curtain fully open now, see the bed and storage compartments. No man, no passenger, nobody. She approached cautiously, pepper spray ready, and climbed back into the cab, checked the sleeper thoroughly. Under the bed, behind the seats, in every storage space. Nothing, nobody, the man had vanished. Relief washed through her. Hallucination, maybe, stress, exhaustion. She'd imagined him, had to have imagined him. Angela started her engine and pulled back onto I-25, hands still trembling but breathing easier. At 1:27 a.m. he was back, sitting in the sleeper berth, same position, same expression, like he'd never been gone. You can't get rid of me, he said in that flat, distant voice. I'm part of your truck now, part of your journey. You picked me up, and passengers don't just disappear because you want them to. As Angela screamed, pure terror, raw and primal, she swerved across lanes, nearly losing control before regaining composure and steadying the Peterbilt. Other trucks passed, drivers giving her concerned looks, but nobody stopped. Nobody could see inside her cab. Nobody could see the thing that shouldn't be there. What are you? Angela forced the words out. What do you want? I'm a hitchhiker, that's all, just someone looking for a ride, and you gave me one. Now I need to reach my destination. Where do you want to go? I'll take you there. Just tell me where and I'll drop you off and you can leave. My destination is the same as yours. I go where you go. I ride until you stop driving. That's how this works. Oh, that's insane. Passengers have destinations. You can't just ride indefinitely. Can't I? The man's smile widened, and Angela saw that his teeth were wrong. Too many teeth. Rows of them like a shark cramming a mouth that should only hold one set. You picked up something you shouldn't have. You felt sorry for something you shouldn't have acknowledged, and now it's yours, a passenger forever. As Angela grabbed her CB radio. Breaker 19, this is Morrison running southbound on I-25. I need help. I have an intruder in my cab. Somebody please respond. Static answered her, then a voice emerged, but not from another truck. The voice came from her passenger, even though his mouth didn't move in sync with the words. Nobody can help you, Angela. I'm in your truck, but I'm also in your head. I'm part of your reality now. You can tell people about me, but they won't see me. You can point at where I'm sitting, but they'll see an empty seat. To everyone else, you're alone, crazy, hallucinating, but you know I'm real. Angela drove in terrified silence for the next 30 miles. The passenger sat motionless, watching her with those too many teeth occasionally visible when he smiled. She tried ignoring him, tried focusing on the road, on her delivery schedule, on anything except the impossible presence in her sleeper berth. But ignoring him made things worse. Because when she wasn't looking, he moved. She'd check her mirrors and he'd be closer, sitting on the edge of the sleeper berth instead of the back, then sitting on the passenger seat, then leaning forward, his face inches from her shoulder, breath cold against her neck. Stop moving, Angela shouted. Stay back there. I'm not moving. I'm exactly where you put me, where you invited me to be. This is your truck, Angela. You control where passengers sit. If I'm getting closer, it's because you want me closer. I don't want you anywhere. I want you gone. Impossible. You picked me up. That action has consequences. You can't unpick up a hitchhiker once they're inside. The best you can do is learn to coexist. As Angela saw signs for Castle Rock, civilization, witnesses, help. She took the exit at dangerous speed, tires squealing, and pulled into the first truck stop she found. Parked under bright lights with dozens of other trucks nearby. Safety in numbers, safety in visibility. She jumped out and ran to the first driver she saw, an older man fueling his Kenworth. Please, you have to help me. There's someone in my truck, a man. I don't know how he got there, but he won't leave. The driver looked at her with concern. Okay, slow down. Someone broke into your truck. You want me to call the police? Yes, no, I don't know. Just come look, come see. She dragged him to her Peterbilt. The sleeper berth was empty. Again, no passenger. No evidence anyone had ever been there. The driver checked thoroughly, even climbed into the cab and looked around, but found nothing. Ma'am, I think maybe you're overtired. When's the last time you slept, really slept? If Angela wanted to argue, to insist she wasn't hallucinating, but exhaustion was crashing down on her like a wave. She hadn't slept properly in days, maybe weeks. Just short naps between loads, survival sleep, never quality rest. Maybe you're right, she heard herself saying. Maybe I need to sleep. The driver nodded sympathetically. Get some rest, you'll feel better, and if you're still worried, call the police, but I don't see anyone in your truck. He walked away. Angela climbed back into her cab, locked both doors, and pulled the curtain closed around the sleeper berth. She needed sleep, needed to reset her mind, needed to prove to herself that the passenger was just exhaustion-induced hallucination. She lay down on the bed, closed her eyes, felt herself starting to drift. Something touched her shoulder, cold fingers, gentle pressure. As Angela's eyes snapped open, the passenger sat on the bed beside her, closer than ever, his face inches from hers. His breath smelled like decay. His eyes were completely black now, no whites, no iris, just solid darkness. You can't sleep while I'm here, he whispered. Every time you close your eyes, I get stronger, more real, more permanent. If you fall asleep with me in your truck, you'll never wake up alone again. I'll be here forever, visible to you, invisible to everyone else. Your constant companion until you die or go insane, whichever comes first. As Angela bolted upright, gasping, the passenger retreated slightly, giving her space but not leaving, never leaving. What do you want? Angela's voice cracked. Just tell me what you want and I'll do it. I want to ride, that's all. I'm a hitchhiker. I exist to be picked up and transported. You gave me what I wanted when you stopped at Rollins, but now I want more. I want to ride forever, and you're going to give me that. You're going to drive with me in your truck until your body fails or your mind breaks. And then I'll wait for the next driver who makes your mistake. The next person who sees someone standing alone and feels sympathy and stops to help. I never stopped at Rollins, Angela screamed. Didn't you? The passenger's mouth stretched impossibly wide, showing all those rows of teeth. Check your GPS history, check your logbook, check your fuel receipts. The evidence says you stopped. Reality says you stopped. Your memory is the only thing claiming otherwise, and memory is so unreliable, so easy to doubt. As Angela grabbed her electronic logbook, checked her drive history. There, a 17-minute stop at Rollins Rest Area, mile marker 215, logged automatically by her truck system. Impossible to fake. The stop had happened. But she remembered not stopping, remembered driving straight through. Two contradictory memories, two contradictory realities, and no way to determine which was true. You're making me crazy, Angela whispered. That's what you are, some kind of psychosis, manifestation of stress. I'm having a breakdown. Maybe, the passenger leaned back against the sleeper berth wall. Or maybe I'm exactly what I appear to be, a hitchhiker you picked up who won't leave. Does it matter which is true? The outcome is the same. I'm here, you can't remove me, and eventually you'll accept my presence. You'll stop fighting. You'll learn to drive with me watching. Learn to sleep with me beside you. Learn to live with a passenger who never reaches his destination. As Angela didn't deliver her load to Denver, she called dispatch from the Castle Rock truck stop, told them she was sick, needed to take emergency time off. They were understanding, gave her a week. She drove home to Cheyenne instead, the passenger sitting silently in her sleeper the entire trip. As at home, he wasn't visible in her truck anymore when she checked from outside. But the moment she climbed into the cabs, there he was, permanent fixture, immovable reality. Now, she saw doctors, therapists, specialists, described her symptoms carefully, avoided mentioning the passenger directly to prevent immediate psychiatric commitment. They diagnosed stress, prescribed rest, suggested she take extended leave from driving. As Angela took 2 months off, stayed away from her truck, lived in her apartment, tried to heal her mind. When she finally returned to her Peterbilt, working up courage to resume her career, the passenger was waiting, sitting in the sleeper berth, smiling with those terrible teeth. "Welcome back, Angela. I've missed our drives together. Where shall we go first?" She drives now with her permanent passenger. Other drivers see her talking to herself sometimes, gesturing at empty space. They think she's on the phone or speaking to dispatch. They don't see the man in her sleeper, don't see the thing that watches her constantly, that moves when she's not looking, that gets closer every day. As Angela has learned to function around him, learned to drive with terror as her constant companion, learned to sleep in shifts, never deep sleep, never trusting enough to truly rest. She's thinner now, hollow-eyed, jumpy. Her performance reviews show declining ratings. Her dispatch notes include concerns about her mental stability. But she keeps driving, because stopping means confronting what she's become. Stopping means admitting that she picked up something at Rollins or didn't. Memory is so unreliable, and that choice has consequences that can never be undone. And sometimes, late at night on empty highways, Angela sees other trucks pulled over at rest areas, sees drivers talking to people who are standing alone in parking lots, sees doors unlocking, sees passengers climbing into cabs. She wants to warn them, wants to scream, "Don't stop, don't pick anyone up, don't feel sympathy," but she can't, because maybe she's the only one affected. Maybe her passenger is unique. Maybe warning others would just spread the contamination. Or maybe every driver who stops for a lonely hitchhiker ends up like her. Maybe highways are full of trucks carrying invisible passengers. Maybe the thing in Angela's sleeper berth is just one of thousands, all riding along, all watching, all waiting for their hosts to finally break. "You're thinking about warning people," her passenger says, reading her thoughts. "Don't bother, they won't listen. Nobody ever listens to warnings about hitchhikers. The sympathy is too strong. The human need to help is too powerful. They'll stop. They'll pick up passengers, and those passengers will become permanent, just like me." As Angela drives on, I-25 stretches ahead, empty and dark. Her passenger sits in the sleeper berth, watching with black eyes and too many teeth. And Angela knows, absolutely knows, that she'll never be alone in her truck again. Not until she dies. Not until she breaks. Not until the passenger decides he's done with her and moves on to his next host. But when will that be? Years, decades, never. The passenger smiles and doesn't answer, just sits there, watching, waiting, writing. Forever. Story 8, The Detour That Leads to Yesterday. Kevin Walsh hit the detour sign at 4:17 p.m. on Highway 395 through Eastern California. Road closed ahead, follow detour with an arrow pointing right onto an unnamed county road. His GPS showed Highway 395 as clear, no construction alerts, no closures. But the sign was official. Caltrans orange, properly reflective, positioned with orange cones funneling traffic onto the alternate route. Kevin took the detour. 26 years of professional driving had taught him that ignoring official signage was a good way to find yourself stuck behind road construction for hours. His load of electronics from Reno to Bakersfield was time-sensitive. Following a detour for a few miles was better than sitting in traffic. The county road wound through high desert scrubland. Nothing unusual. No other vehicles visible in either direction, but that was normal for Eastern California backroads. Kevin's Mac Anthem handled the narrower pavement easily. His GPS showed him as off-route but recalculating, which was expected. As after 7 miles, Kevin checked the time. 4:17 p.m. That couldn't be right. He'd been driving for at least 15 minutes, should be 4:32 p.m. or later. He looked at his dashboard clock, 4:17 p.m., his phone, 4:17 p.m., his watch, 4:17 p.m. All his timepieces were synchronized and wrong, or right, or stuck. Kevin tapped his watch face. The second hand moved, definitely not frozen. But when it reached 59 seconds, it rolled over to 0 and began counting up again. Time was moving forward, but the minute wasn't advancing. Kevin's skin prickled. Something was very wrong. He looked for places to turn around, but the county road had no shoulder, just asphalt dropping straight into desert scrub on both sides. And ahead, maybe a mile distant, he could see where the road rejoined Highway 395. Just push through, get back to the main highway. Everything would normalize. He drove toward the rejoin point. The distance seemed right about a mile, but it wasn't getting closer at proper speed. Kevin was doing 53 miles per hour, which should cover a mile in roughly 70 seconds, but the rejoin point maintained its distance. Always a mile away, always visible but never nearer. And his clock still read 4:17 p.m. Kevin's CB radio crackled. Breaker 19, this is Thunderbolt running northbound 395. Anyone else getting stuck in this time loop detour? You're experiencing it too. Kevin grabbed his microphone. I thought I was losing my mind. My clocks are stuck at 4:17 p.m. Same here, 4:17. Been driving this detour for what feels like an hour, but time's not moving. And that rejoin point ahead, I've been approaching it for 30 minutes. Never gets closer. What is this? Kevin's voice pitched higher. Some kind of quantum effect, government experiment. I don't know, brother, but I'm about ready to drive off-road, consequences be damned. This feels like being stuck in purgatory. Kevin considered that option. Just crank the wheel, drive into the desert, get away from this impossible road. But the scrub looked dense, rocky. His Mac could handle rough terrain, but not with a fully loaded trailer. He'd get stuck or damage the cargo or worse. Let's try something, Kevin said into the microphone. I'm going to slow down, see if that changes anything. Maybe speed is part of the equation. He reduced speed to 40 miles per hour. The rejoin point ahead remained exactly 1 mile distant, 30 miles per hour, still 1 mile, 20, 10, 5. No matter his speed, the distance didn't change. The road under his tires moved normally. He could see pavement passing, see mile markers on the shoulder, but his position relative to the rejoin point stayed fixed. Okay, that's not working. Kevin accelerated back to 50. I'm going to try stopping completely, see what happens. Copy that, I'm behind you somewhere, I think. Though I haven't seen your truck, this detour might be bigger than we thought. Kevin brought the Mac to a complete stop. Engaged parking brake, got out and stood on the asphalt looking around. Empty desert stretched in all directions under late afternoon sun. The rejoin point ahead was visible, Highway 395 perpendicular to this county road, cars passing on the main highway like normal reality continuing just out of reach. His watch read 4:17 p.m. The sun's position in the sky corresponded to 4:17 p.m. in November. Shadows fell at correct angles. But Kevin had been stuck in this moment for at least 40 minutes by his internal sense of duration. Something caught his eye. On the shoulder, half buried in sand, was a piece of paper. Kevin picked it up, a fuel receipt, dated yesterday, November 3rd, 2023. Location, a truck stop in Bridgeport, California. Time of purchase, 4:17 p.m. Kevin's hands started shaking. Yesterday. Someone had bought fuel yesterday at 4:17 p.m. and somehow ended up here. Or maybe this receipt was older. Maybe lots of drivers had been stuck in this detour over the years, all trapped at 4:17 p.m., all leaving evidence. He searched the shoulder more carefully, found more debris. A trucker's logbook with water-damaged pages, dates mostly illegible but one entry visible. Nov 3, 2022, 16:17 detoured onto County Road, experiencing time anomaly. A year ago. Someone had been here a year ago, trapped in the same moment. More items, a cell phone, cracked screen, battery dead, a coffee mug. A trucker cap with a logo Kevin didn't recognize. A CB radio handset cord frayed, all partially buried. All suggesting previous drivers had been here trapped and either escaped or... Kevin didn't want to complete that thought. His own CB crackled again. This is Thunderbolt. I found something. Papers on the shoulder. Looks like other drivers have been stuck here before us. How many people are trapped in this moment? I found stuff too, logbooks. Fuel receipts. All timestamped around 4:17 p.m. on various dates. I think this detour is collecting drivers, pulling us into this specific time across multiple days or years. So how do we get out? Kevin looked at the highway ahead, cars passing normally, reality continuing just out of reach. Maybe we need to go backwards, reverse back to where we entered the detour, see if the entrance is still there. He climbed back into his Mac and shifted into reverse. Started backing down the county road, watching his mirrors moving slowly. The pavement unreeled behind him. Quarter mile, half mile, 3/4. But when Kevin looked forward, the rejoined point ahead hadn't moved. It remained 1 mile distant despite him traveling backward away from it. The space is looped, Kevin said into his radio. We're not actually moving through distance. We're stuck in a pocket, a bubble. Driving forward or backward doesn't matter because there's nowhere to go. So we're just trapped forever. That's insane. Kevin's mind raced. Loops had breaks. Patterns had flaws. Time anomalies had to follow some kind of rules even if he didn't understand them. What was special about 4:17 p.m.? What made this moment different? He pulled up his phone and searched for 417 significance. Results appeared: angel number meanings, numerology, biblical references, nothing concrete. Then he tried 4:17 p.m. November and found something interesting. A news article from 1996. Major earthquake in Eastern California, epicenter near Highway 395, occurred at 4:17 p.m. on November 3, 1996. 27 years ago, November 3, 4:17 p.m. The same time Kevin was stuck in. The same date that fuel receipt was from. This moment wasn't random. It was the anniversary of something significant. Something that had fractured time or space or reality in this location. A thunderbolt, you still reading me? Oh yeah, I'm here. I think I know what this is. 27 years ago, there was a major earthquake right here. 4:17 p.m. November 3rd. This detour is somehow looping that exact moment. We're stuck in a recursive anniversary. Okay, cool, we know what it is. How does that help us escape? Kevin thought hard. Earthquakes lasted seconds. The 417 moment would eventually advance to 418, at least in the original timeline. Maybe the loop had a natural end. Maybe they just had to wait for the moment to complete. We wait, Kevin said. We wait for 4:18 p.m. The earthquake lasted maybe 30 seconds in real time. Once the moment completes, once we pass beyond the duration of the original event, maybe the loop releases us. And if it doesn't, then we're stuck forever at 4:17 p.m. while reality continues around us. But what choice do we have? As they waited, Kevin sat in his cab watching his clock, willing the numbers to change. 417, 417, 417. Minutes passed, he could feel them passing, could count seconds in his head, but the clock refused to acknowledge temporal progression. Then finally movement. His dashboard clock flickered, 417, 417, 417, 418. The rejoin point ahead suddenly rushed toward Kevin's truck like a wave. Or his truck rushed toward it. Space contracted, distances collapsing. 1 mile became half mile, became quarter mile, became immediate. Kevin's Mac rolled back onto Highway 395 without him touching the accelerator, momentum carrying him back into normal reality. The traffic flowed around him, cars, other trucks, everything moving normally. Kevin checked his clock, 4:18 p.m., his phone, 4:18 p.m. Time was progressing correctly again. His CB erupted with Thunderbolt's voice. "We're out, brother, we're out. I'm back on 395, time's moving again." Same here, we made it. Whatever that was, we survived it. Kevin merged into traffic and drove south toward Bakersfield, hands trembling, sweat soaking his shirt despite the cab's climate control. The detour was behind him. Reality was restored. Everything was fine. Except when Kevin checked his odometer, something was wrong. He'd left Reno with the odometer reading 473,296 miles. Now it read 473,289 miles. He'd lost 7 miles, driven backward through distance while trapped in that time loop. And his fuel gauge showed fuller than before. Quarter tank when he entered the detour, now showing 3/8. He'd gained fuel, impossibly gained it, as if the time reversal had also reversed consumption. Kevin's hands tightened on the wheel. He'd escaped the 417 loop, but the experience had changed things, altered things. His truck carried evidence of temporal regression. What else had changed? What other details had reversed that he hadn't noticed yet? He reached Bakersfield 3H. Hours later and delivered his electronics load. Everything normal, signed paperwork, confirmed contents. No issues. Kevin grabbed dinner at a truck stop, called his wife to check in, tried to convince himself the detour had been a bizarre one-time experience. But when he looked at his phone's call history, something stopped his heart. His last call to his wife was listed twice. Once from today at 7:44 p.m., the call he'd just made, and once from yesterday at 7:44 p.m., a call he didn't remember making. Both conversations identical, same words, same duration, same everything. Kevin pulled up his messages. Texts from yesterday that he'd received today. Photos he'd taken yesterday that showed today's locations. His entire phone was registering events from 2 timeframes simultaneously. He checked his logbook. November 3rd entries appeared twice, once in his normal handwriting, Once in handwriting that was almost his but slightly different, letters formed at different angles, pressure variations. Like someone else had used his hand to create parallel entries documenting the same events from different temporal positions. Kevin's reflection in his truck's mirror looked wrong, not obviously wrong, just subtly wrong. His face was his face, but the symmetry was inverted. His scars were on the wrong sides. His features mirrored incorrectly, like he was looking at himself from the other side of reality. The detour had let him out, but it hadn't returned him to his original timeline. He'd exited into yesterday, or a version of yesterday, or a parallel track where yesterday and today existed simultaneously. Kevin was living November 4th while also still experiencing November 3rd, temporally displaced by exactly 24 hours. He tried explaining this to his wife when he got home, showed her the duplicate call logs, the mirrored reflection, the impossible fuel gauge readings. She looked at him with concern and suggested he take time off, rest, recover from whatever stress had caused this confusion. But Kevin knew it wasn't confusion. The detour had done something to him, shifted him, displaced him, and now he existed slightly out of phase with normal reality. Other drivers notice. When Kevin talks to them at truck stops, they sometimes respond to things he hasn't said yet, or fail to hear things he says clearly. Like his words are reaching them from yesterday, from a timeline one day behind, and their responses are coming from tomorrow one day ahead. His dispatcher sometimes calls about loads Kevin hasn't accepted yet, or doesn't call about loads Kevin's already confirmed. Their records and his records diverge by exactly one day, creating endless confusion and scheduling conflicts. And sometimes, when Kevin drives past Highway 395 on other routes, he sees the detour sign, sees the orange cones, sees the county road branching off into desert. He sees his own Mac anthem turning onto that detour, sees himself driving into the 417 loop exactly as he did on November 3rd. He's watching his own past, or his own future, or his own eternal present, watching himself enter the detour over and over, trapped in a recursive observation where the observer and observed are the same person separated by 24 hours of temporal displacement. Kevin doesn't take Highway 395 anymore, refuses all dispatches through Eastern California, sticks to routes he knows are safe, are stable, are firmly anchored in single timelines. But sometimes he dreams about that county road, dreams about 4:17 p.m. extending forever, dreams about the rejoin point always 1 mile ahead, always unreachable, always promising escape that never quite arrives. And in his dreams, he never escapes. In his dreams, the clock never advances to 4:18. In his dreams, he's still there, trapped at 4:17 p.m. on November 3rd, driving eternally through a moment that earthquake fractured 27 years ago. Maybe he's still there in reality too. Maybe what escaped the detour was just a shadow, a temporal echo, allowed to continue through normal time while his true self remains locked at 4:17. Driving and waiting and hoping for a progression that will never come. Kevin doesn't know which version is real anymore. The one living his life one day out of phase, or the one still trapped in the eternal 4:17 moment. Maybe both. Maybe all versions are real, all existing simultaneously, all experiencing their own variations of Highway 395 and its impossible detour. All he knows for certain is that somewhere in Eastern California, a detour sign still stands, Still directs traffic onto a county road that leads to yesterday. Still collects drivers who don't know they're entering a trap disguised as construction routing. And Kevin can't warn anyone, can't report the detour. Because which Kevin would make that report, the one displaced by one day or the one still driving the loop, and would anyone bell? Believe either versions. So the detour remains. The moment remains. 4:17 p.m., November 3rd, eternal and patient, waiting for the next driver who will follow official signage into a fracture in time. And Kevin drives his routes, existing slightly out of sync with reality, a living reminder that some detours don't just change your path. They change your winds. A Story 9, the Jake break that screams NAMES. Raymond Cruz first heard the name at 2:41 a.m. descending Donner Pass on Interstate 80. His Western Star's Jake brake engaged automatically, engine compression slowing the loaded truck on the steep grade, and the normal mechanical roar contained something extra. A word, a name, screamed in agony from within the engine itself. Melissa. Raymond's hands jerked on the wheel. The sound was impossible. Jake brakes made mechanical noise, engine valves, exhaust pressure, pure physics. They didn't form words, didn't scream, didn't shriek names with such raw terror that Raymond's blood went cold. He released the accelerator, letting the Jake brake disengage. Silence returned, just road noise and tire hum, normal, safe. Raymond convinced himself he'd imagined it. Stress, exhaustion, 13 hours of driving from Salt Lake City toward Sacramento. His mind was playing tricks. The grade steepened. His speed climbed 47 miles per hour, 52, 57, too fast. He needed the Jake brake. Raymond tapped the throttle, triggering the compression release. The familiar roar erupted from his exhaust stacks. Melissa, Melissa, please, Melissa, don't leave me. The screaming filled Raymond's cab despite coming from outside, from his engine, from the Jake brake mechanism that was physically incapable of producing human speech. The voice was male, young, absolutely terrified. And it knew a name. Melissa. Who was Melissa? Raymond didn't know anyone named Melissa. He white-knuckled the steering wheel and endured the descent, Jake brake screaming that name over and over. Melissa, with every compression cycle, dozens of times, hundreds. The grade was 7 miles long. Raymond's truck screamed a stranger's name for 7 miles while he tried not to lose control or lose his mind. At the bottom, Raymond pulled into the first rest area and killed his engine. Silence crashed down like physical relief. He sat shaking, listening to his heart hammer, trying to rationalize what he'd experienced. The mechanical defect had to be something wrong with his Jake brake, creating auditory pareidolia, his brain finding patterns in random noise, interpreting mechanical sound as speech. He'd get it checked in Sacramento, get the whole exhaust system inspected. Logical explanation, rational solution. Raymond started his engine and pulled back onto I-80. The highway flattened out across the Central Valley. No need for Jake brake, just cruise control and open road. Everything normal, everything fine. His phone rang, unknown number. Raymond answered via Bluetooth. Yes. Sobbing male voice, the same one that had screamed from his Jake brake. Please, you have to help me find her. I can't find her anywhere. Melissa was right here and then she wasn't, and I don't know where she went. Please, I'm so scared. Who is this? Raymond's voice cracked. How did you get this number? I don't know anything. I just know I lost Melissa and I can't find her and everything hurts. Please help me. Oh, where are you? What's your locations? I don't know, it's dark, cold, I can't see anything, can't feel anything except the screaming. Why am I screaming? Why can't I stop? Listen, I'm calling 911. I'll get you help, just stay on the lines. I can't stay on the line, I'm not on a line, I'm in your engine, I'm part of your Jake brake. I'm trapped in the compression cycle. Every time you slow down, I scream, I can't stop screaming. Please make it stop. Please find Melissa, she'll know what to do. The call disconnected. Raymond immediately pulled over and dialed 911, reported the call, the distressed male voice, the claims about being trapped in his truck's engine. The dispatcher took the information but sounded skeptical. They'd investigate. They'd look for missing persons named Melissa. They'd contact Raymond if they learned anything. Raymond continued toward Sacramento, avoiding situations that required his Jake brake, took the long way around, avoided downhill grades, but eventually, at a loading dock, he had to back up, had to use engine compression for precise control. The moment his Jake brake engaged, the screaming returned. Melissa, where are you? Melissa, I'm sorry. Melissa, please. Workers at the loading dock looked up, confused, trying to locate the source of the human screaming. They walked around Raymond's Western Star, checking underneath, looking for someone in distress. But the sound came from the exhaust stacks, from the Jake brake, from nowhere that made physical sense. You got a radio playing, one worker asked through Raymond's window, some kind of prank. No prank, I don't know what's making that sound. It's been happening since dawn or pass. Sounds like someone screaming, sounds real. I know, I've called the police, I don't know what else to do. Raymond finished loading and drove to a truck stop, called his fleet maintenance supervisor, explained the situation. The supervisor was skeptical but agreed Raymond should bring the truck in for inspection, first thing tomorrow morning. Until then, avoid using the Jake brake if possible. Raymond tried sleeping in his cab that night, but every time he started drifting off, he heard the screaming. Faint, distant, like it was happening inside his engine even when the engine was off. Melissa, Melissa, please, an endless loop of desperate pleading. At 4 a.m., unable to bear it any longer, Raymond started searching online. Melissa missing person Donner Pass. Results appeared, multiple results. Dozens of women named Melissa who'd gone missing over the years near Donner Pass. The area had a dark history, the Donner Party stranded pioneers, death and desperation. But one result stood out, article from 6 months ago. Memorial service held for Melissa Chen, 27, lost on Donner Pass. She'd been hiking with her fiancé, Thomas Brennan, when a storm hit, separated in the blizzard. Melissa fell into a ravine. Thomas searched for 3 days, screaming her name until his voice gave out, until rescuers found him with severe hypothermia and frostbite. He died 2 weeks later from complications. Melissa's body was found in spring when snow melted. Thomas Brennan, the voice screaming from Raymond's Jake brake was Thomas, had to be. Somehow Thomas's final moments screaming for Melissa dying in the cold had imprinted on that location. And when Raymond's Jake brake activated descending Donner Pass, it had picked up that echo, that recording, that ghost. But ghosts didn't make phone calls, didn't carry on conversations. Thomas had spoken to Raymond, had answered questions, had described being trapped in the compression cycle. That was more than residual haunting. That was active consciousness. Aware, trapped, suffering. Raymond drove to the maintenance facility at dawn. Technicians checked his Jake brake thoroughly. Compression release system was functioning normally. Exhaust manifold was fine. Everything was mechanically perfect. No defects. No explanation for the sounds Raymond was reporting. Are you sure you're not hearing things? The lead technician asked. You've been driving a lot, sleep deprived. I know what I heard. It's a man's voice, screaming a name, Melissa, over and over. Well, I can't find anything wrong with your truck. Jake brake is working exactly as designed. If you're hearing voices, that's not a mechanical issue. That's something else. Raymond took his Western Star back. He had loads to deliver, bills to pay, life to continue. So he drove with his haunted Jake brake, enduring the screams every time he needed compression braking. Other drivers began noticing. They'd pull up alongside at truck stops asking about the sounds. Who's screaming in your truck, man? That's messed up. Raymond tried explaining ghost tragedy Donner Pass. Most drivers thought he was insane. A few believed him. Older drivers who'd been on the road for decades and had their own stories about haunted routes, strange encounters, things that couldn't be explained but couldn't be denied. The screaming evolved. After 2 weeks, Thomas was screaming more than just Melissa's name. He was screaming for help, for release, for mercy. Let me go, please let me go, I can't do this anymore. Every compression cycle is agony, every descent is torture. Please stop driving, please destroy this engine, please free me. Raymond didn't know how to free a ghost trapped in machinery, didn't know if it was even possible. He contacted paranormal investigators, brought 2 of them to examine his truck. They used equipment, EMF readers, spirit boxes, thermal cameras. The equipment went haywire around the exhaust stacks. Extreme electromagnetic fluctuations, temperature variations, something was definitely present. He's bound to the engine, one investigator explained. Specifically to the Jake brake mechanism. The compression cycles are repeating his final experience, lungs compressing, unable to breathe, dying in the cold. Every time you activate it, he relives his death. So how do I stop it? How do I help him? You can't, not without destroying the engine. The binding is complete, physical, spiritual. He's part of the machine now. Raymond couldn't destroy a $200,000 engine based on paranormal investigation advice. His company would never authorize it. He'd lose his job. So he continued driving with Thomas screaming, and the guilt ate him alive. Every grade he descended, every time he needed to slow his loaded truck, he was torturing someone, forcing them to relive their death, making them a scream for mercy he couldn't provide. The phone calls continued too. Thomas would call randomly, always from unknown numbers, always desperate, always begging Raymond to find some way to release him. I'm in so much pain, every second is pain. The compression crushes me, the cold burns. Melissa is somewhere beyond this torture and I can't reach her. Please, please do something. I don't know what to do, Raymond finally screamed back during one call. Tell me what to do and I'll do it. Destroy the engine. It's the only way. Wreck the truck. Trigger a mechanical failure. Something that forces them to replace the entire compression system. That might break the binding. That might let me move on. Raymond couldn't deliberately crash his truck, couldn't stage a mechanical failure. The risks were too high: injury, death, legal consequences, financial ruin, but he also couldn't continue torturing Thomas forever. The moral weight was crushing. Raymond started having nightmares, started hearing Thomas even when the engine was off. The screaming was colonizing his mind, taking up permanent residence. Then 3 months after the haunting began, Raymond was descending a grade in Oregon when his Jake brake engaged and something changed. The screaming stopped mid-word. Silence. Just mechanical noise. Normal Jake brake sounds without any human voice. Raymond's phone rang, unknown number. He answered, expecting Thomas, but heard a woman's voice instead. "Thank you. I don't know who you are or how you helped, but thank you. He's with me now. He finally found me. We're together. We're free." Melissa. Yes, Thomas was trapped and you carried him. The journey through your engine brought him closer to where I was. The repeated descents, the cycles of compression, they moved him through layers of death. And today, at the bottom of that last grade, he crossed the final threshold. He's here, he's at peace, we're at peace. So it's over, he's not trapped anymore. It's over, your truck is just a truck again. Thank you for enduring what you endured. Thank you for not destroying the engine. The journey needed to complete. If you'd stopped it early, he'd still be trapped. The call ended. Raymond drove in stunned silence. He tested his Jake brake at the next opportunity. Normal sounds, no screaming, no voices, just machinery functioning exactly as designed. But Raymond was changed, permanently changed. He'd spent 3 months as an unwilling prison warden to a tortured soul. 3 months hearing agony he couldn't relieve. 3 months knowing that every time he slowed his truck, he was inflicting suffering on someone who'd already died in terror and pain. He drives differently now, uses his Jake brake less, takes longer routes to avoid steep grades. And when he passes Donner Pass, he drives in reverent silence, thinking about Thomas and Melissa and the ghost that had screamed their way through his engine toward reunion. Other drivers have started reporting similar experiences. Voices in their Jake brakes, names being screamed during descents, different names, different voices, but the same pattern. Donner Pass seems to be collecting the dead, binding them to trucks that pass through, forcing them to ride along in compression cycles until they complete whatever journey they need to complete. Raymond warns new drivers about it, tells them to expect the screaming, tells them not to panic, tells them to endure it because the souls trapped in their engines need to travel, need to move through layers of death, need to reach wherever it is they're going. Most think he's crazy, but some listen, some remember. And when their own Jake brakes start screaming names, they know they're not alone. They know others have carried these ghosts before. They know to just drive and let the trapped souls complete their terrible, necessary journeys. Raymond still gets calls sometimes, unknown numbers, but now it's other drivers calling to ask if he's experienced the screaming too, asking how long it lasted, asking if it eventually stopped, asking if the ghosts really do find peace. And Raymond tells them yes. Eventually, the screaming stops, the souls move on, the trucks return to normal, but the memory remains. The knowledge that death isn't always the end. That sometimes the dead need transportation, need compression cycles and descending grades and patient drivers willing to carry them through the final miles between death and whatever comes after. Raymond's Jake brake is silent now, has been for years, but he'll never forget Thomas's voice, never forget those 3 months of screaming, never forget the weight of carrying someone's unfinished death through his engine cycle after cycle, grade after grade. He drives Donner Pass regularly now, volunteers for those runs, because if another ghost needs passage, if another Thomas is out there screaming for another Melissa, Raymond wants to be the one who helps, wants to be the driver who endures th. He's screaming without destroying the engine. Who carries the dead toward peace, no matter how terrible the journey sounds? His western star climbs that pass and descends the other side. Jake brake quiet, engine functioning perfectly. But Raymond listens anyway. Listens for the moment when silence breaks and screaming begins and another name starts echoing through compression cycles. Waiting, ready, willing to carry whatever ghost needs carrying. Because that's what drivers do. They transport cargo. And sometimes the cargo is invisible, sometimes it's souls, sometimes it's screaming. And sometimes at the end of the journey, there's peace. So story 10, the dashboard that counts down to nothing. Patricia Daniels bought the used Freightliner Cascadia in March 2023 from a dealer in Indianapolis. Low miles, excellent condition, previous owner had maintained it meticulously. Everything checked out. Everything was perfect. Except for one small detail Patricia didn't notice during the test drive. Well, the dashboard had an extra display. Between the speedometer and tachometer, where most trucks had nothing or maybe a small information screen, this Cascadia had a digital counter. Red LED numbers, old-style 7-segment display showing 47,291. Patricia assumed it was a trip meter or a maintenance counter. She reset it, nothing happened. The numbers didn't zero out. She checked the manual, no mention of this display. She asked the dealer. He claimed not to know what it was, probably aftermarket installation by the previous owner. But Patricia wasn't bothered. The truck ran well, the price was fair. One mysterious counter wasn't a deal breaker. She signed the paperwork and drove her new Freightliner out of Indianapolis, starting her career as an owner-operator hauling freight across the Midwest. By that evening, the counter read 47,286. It was counting down. Patricia watched the numbers change as she drove. 47,285, 47,284, 47,283, one decrement approximately every hour. Not precise, sometimes 57 minutes, sometimes 63, but averaging around 60 minutes per number. The counter was measuring something temporal, time remaining until, what? She tried everything to remove it, pried at the display with a screwdriver, disconnected power to the dashboard, pulled fuses, nothing worked. The red numbers glowed steadily, immune to her interference, continuing their countdown regardless of electrical power. They ran on something that wasn't her truck's battery. Patricia called the dealer. He'd never noticed the counter, had no documentation about it. The previous owner was deceased, heart attack, died suddenly, so no chance of asking him. The dealer offered to take the truck back, refund her purchase, but Patricia had already invested in insurance and registration. Had already quit her previous job to go independent. Taking the truck back would unravel her entire plan. She decided to ignore the counter. Let it count down to zero or whatever it was doing. She had freight to haul and bills to pay. A mysterious display was unsettling but not dangerous. Just drive, just work, just ignore it. Weeks passed, the counter steadily decreased. 47,000, 46,500, 46,000. Patricia tried covering it with tape with a piece of cardboard with anything that would block the glowing numbers. But she always ended up removing the covering. Something compelled her to watch, to track the countdown, to know exactly how many numbers remained. At 45,000, Patricia started having dreams, nightmares. She was driving her Freightliner and the countdown reached zero and something happened. The dreams were vague about what exactly, catastrophic mechanical failure or collision or something worse that her dreaming mind couldn't properly visualize. But the dreams always ended with zero and disaster. She told herself dreams were meaningless, stress manifestations, her subconscious fixating on the counter and creating anxiety, nothing prophetic, nothing real, just neurons firing randomly during sleep. But the dreams intensified. Every night, multiple times per night, always the same pattern, driving, countdown reaching zero, disaster. Patricia started dreading sleep, started taking caffeine pills to stay awake longer, started driving exhausted because exhaustion was better than nightmares. At 43,000, other drivers started commenting. Patricia would park at truck stops and drivers walking past would stare at her dashboard. "What's that counting down to?" they'd ask. "Why do you have a death clock in your truck?" Death clock, that's what they called it. Not countdown timer, not trip meter, death clock, like they recognized it, like they'd seen it before. Patricia asked if anyone knew what it was, where it came from, what happened at zero. Nobody had answers. They just looked uncomfortable and walked away quickly. At 40,000, Patricia's loads started going wrong. Not her fault, just bad luck. A shipment damaged in transit. A delivery address that didn't exist. A client who refused payment due to fabricated contract violations. Small disasters that added up to financial stress. Patricia was losing money. Her insurance premiums increased. Her truck developed minor problems that were expensive to fix. The counter kept descending. 39,000, 38,500, 38,000. Patricia became obsessed with calculating when it would reach zero. At roughly 1 decrement per hour, 38,000 hours was approximately 1,583 days, 4 years, 4 months. Zero would arrive sometime in July 2027. 4 years until something bad happened, 4 years until disaster. Unless Patricia was completely wrong about what the counter meant, maybe it wasn't counting down to disaster. Maybe it was measuring something benign, miles until maintenance. Hours of engine life remaining, something normal with an unnecessarily ominous display. But Patricia didn't believe that. The death clock was counting down to death, her death, or her truck's death, or something's death. The dreams told her so. Other drivers' reactions told her so. The escalating bad luck told her so. At 35,000, Patricia tried selling the Freightliner. Listed it online. Buyers came to inspect. Every single one noticed the counter, asked what it was, became uncomfortable when Patricia admitted she didn't know. They all walked away without making offers. The truck was cursed, obviously cursed. Nobody wanted to buy a death clock. At 32,000, Patricia contacted paranormal investigators, the same ones who'd later help Raymond with his screaming Jake break. They examined the counter, ran tests, detected abnormal energy signatures around the display. "This is a hex," one investigator explained. "A curse bound to the vehicle. Someone put this here deliberately. The previous owner, maybe, or someone before him. The counter is measuring your remaining lifespan. When it reaches zero, you die." "That's insane," Patricia's voice went shrill. "Counters can't measure lifespan. That's not how reality works. Reality is more flexible than you think. Hexes are real, curses are real, and this truck is definitely cursed. Our advice: stop driving it, park it, walk away. Let the counter run down on its own without you in the vehicle." But Patricia couldn't stop driving. She had loans to pay, had no other source of income, had invested everything in owner-operator independence. Walking away from the truck meant financial ruin. She had to keep driving, had to hope the investigators were wrong, had to pray the counter meant something other than her remaining hours of life. At 30,000, Patricia started seeing the previous owner. Not hallucinations, not dreams. He appeared in her mirrors, sitting in her sleeper berth, a pale man in his 50s with hollow eyes. He never spoke, just watched her, followed her. Present whenever she looked for him, gone when she tried to confront him directly. She researched his death, found obituary information. Paul Hendricks died of sudden cardiac arrest at 53 while sleeping in his truck at a rest area in Ohio. No prior heart problems, no warning, just went to sleep and never woke up. The obituary photo matched the man Patricia was seeing in her mirrors. Paul had owned the Freightliner before her, had driven it for years before his death, had installed the counter or inherited it from whoever owned the truck before him, had watched the numbers count down until they reached his personal zero. And now his ghost was attached to the truck, bound to the curse, watching Patricia approach her own zero. "How do I stop this?" Patricia asked Paul's ghost during one encounter. She was parked at a rest area and he was sitting in her passenger seat, translucent but visible. "How do I break the curse?" Paul's mouth moved, no sound, but Patricia could read his lips. "You can't." "There has to be a way. Curses can be broken. There's always a way." Paul shook his head slowly. His lips formed more words. "The counter measures debt, miles driven beyond your allotted time. You bought those miles with the truck. Now you have to pay them back. The counter is your receipt." "What debt? I didn't make any deals. I just bought a truck." "Paul made the deal before me. Someone else made it before Paul. The truck has passed through many owners, each one extending their life by accepting the counter, each one driving borrowed time until the debt comes due. Now it's your turn. Drive until zero, then pay." Patricia's heart hammered. "Pay how? With my life?" Paul nodded once, then faded, disappeared. Left Patricia alone in her cab with the glowing red numbers, 27,543. Over the following months, Patricia tried everything. Contacted priests for exorcisms. Sought out folk magic practitioners for curse-breaking rituals. Found a mechanic who specialized in unusual vehicle problems and paid him $3,000 to remove the counter physically, spiritually, and mechanically. Nothing worked. The counter remained. The number. As descended, the debt accumulated. At 20,000, Patricia accepted her fate. She had approximately 833 days remaining. 2 years, 3 months, she would drive until zero and then something would claim her. Heart attack like Paul, accident, mechanical failure resulting in crash. The method didn't matter, the outcome was fixed. She started a video diary, recorded her experiences, documented the counter's progression, interviewed other drivers who'd seen similar phenomena, built an archive of evidence proving that cursed vehicles existed, that death clocks were real, that some debts followed you beyond normal reality. At 15,000, Patricia noticed a pattern. Every owner in the truck's history had died at zero. She'd traced the Freightliner's title back through 15 years and 7 owners, every single one deceased. Heart attacks, accidents, strokes, aneurysms. All sudden, all fatal, all occurring roughly at the projected 0 point based on when they'd purchased the truck. The dealer who'd sold it to Patricia was working on borrowed time too. He'd owned the truck briefly between Paul and Patricia. His counter, wherever it was, whatever form it took, was probably counting down right now. He'd become part of the curse's chain simply by taking possession of the vehicle. At 10,000, less than 14 months remaining, Patricia made her decision. She wouldn't wait passively for zero. She'd spend her remaining time warning others, telling her story, making sure every driver knew about death clocks and cursed vehicles and the importance of checking for red LED counters that shouldn't exist. She created a website, posted her video diary, spoke at truck stops, handed out flyers. Most drivers thought she was crazy, but some listened. Some checked their dashboards more carefully. Some avoided buying that suspiciously cheap used truck with the weird aftermarket displays. At 5,000, Patricia felt oddly calm. Death was coming. She knew when. She knew approximately where, somewhere on the road in her truck during normal operations. She'd made peace with it, had prepared her family, had written goodbye letters, had organized her affairs so her debts wouldn't transfer to her children. The counter descended through 4,000, then 3,000, then 2,000. Patricia kept driving, kept hauling freight, kept warning others. Her video diary had thousands of views now. People were listening. People were taking her seriously. Maybe her death would serve some purpose. Maybe saving others from similar curses would balance whatever cosmic equation the death clock represented. At 1,000, Patricia started feeling physical effects. Fatigue, chest pain, shortness of breath. Her body knew zero was approaching. Her physiology was preparing for the debt payment. She visited doctors. They found nothing wrong, perfect health, but the symptoms persisted. At 100, Patricia parked her Freightliner at a truck stop in Missouri. She called her family, said goodbye again, told them she loved them, promised that whatever happened next, she'd faced it with courage and clarity. Her daughter begged her to abandon the truck, to walk away, to let someone else deal with zero. Patricia considered it, but she knew the curse would follow. The debt would transfer. Someone would pay. Better her than an innocent who didn't understand what they were inheriting. At 10, Patricia sat in her cab watching the numbers. 10,987,654,321. A zero. The display went dark. The red numbers disappeared. Patricia waited for death, for her heart to stop, for an aneurysm to burst, for whatever mechanism the curse used to collect its debt. Nothing happened. She waited 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10. Her heart kept beating, her lungs kept breathing. She was alive, still alive. The counter had reached zero and she'd survived. Patricia climbed out of her cab, confused, elated, terrified. Had she beaten the curse? Had her warnings and preparations somehow satisfied the debt? Was she free? She walked into the truck stop, got coffee, sat in a booth. Everything felt surreal. She was alive when she should be dead. The curse had failed, or transformed, or something. Her phone rang, unknown number. Patricia answered. Hello. Zero doesn't mean death. Paul Hendrick's voice, clear, no longer ghost faint. It means transition. You've paid your debt in warnings, in helping others avoid this curse. The counter measures karmic debt and you've balanced yours, but the truck isn't done. It needs a new driver, someone else to carry the burden. The counter will reset for them. I don't want to curse anyone else. You don't have a choice. The truck will find its next owner. The counter will appear in their dashboard. The cycle continues. All you can do is warn them too. Add to the chain of knowledge. Help them understand what they're inheriting. That's how the debt is paid forward, in awareness, in preparation, in choice. The call ended. Patricia returned to her Freightliner. The counter had reset. Not to 47,291. To a higher number, 62,847. More hours, more time, a different debt for a different driver. Patricia sold the truck 2 weeks later, told the buyer everything. showed him the death clock, explained the curse. The buyer, young, confident, dismissive of supernatural warnings, bought it anyway. "I don't believe in curses," he said. "It's just a truck." But Patricia watched him drive away with the Freightliner, watched the death clock glowing in his dashboard, watched him enter the chain of owners who'd all believed they could handle it, who'd all thought they were different, who'd all learned too late that some debts can't be escaped. She kept her video diary running, kept documenting, kept warning. The website grew, the views multiplied. And occasionally, Patricia gets emails from drivers who bought used trucks and found mysterious counters. They ask what it means, what they should do, how long they have. And Patricia tells them the truth. The counter measures debt, drive carefully, warn others, pay it forward in awareness. Maybe that's enough to survive zero. Maybe that's enough to break the curse. Or maybe it just delays the inevitable while spreading the knowledge to the next generation of drivers. Patricia doesn't know which. She survived zero, but she still feels the debt's weight, still dreams about that countdown, still checks dashboards obsessively, looking for red LED numbers that shouldn't exist. The Freightliner is out there somewhere. The death clock is counting down for someone else, and Patricia can't stop it. Can only warn, can only document, can only hope that awareness is protection. But deep down, she knows the truth. The curse is patient. The debt is real. And zero always comes eventually, no matter how prepared you think you are. The only question is what you do with the time between now and zero. How you spend those counted hours. Who you warn, who you save, who you condemn by staying silent. Patricia chose warning, chose documentation, chose awareness. And she hopes, desperately hopes, that it was enough to balance whatever debt she inherited when she bought that beautiful, cursed, deadly truck from a dealer in Indianapolis who probably didn't know what he was selling. Or maybe he knew exactly what he was selling. Maybe he was paying his own debt forward, passing the curse to the next link in the chain, ensuring his own survival by sacrificing hers. The Patricia will never know for certain. She only knows that somewhere right now a driver is watching their dashboard, watching red numbers count down, watching their remaining time decrease hour by hour. And that driver is wondering, just like Patricia wondered, what happens at zero. The answer is always the same. You find out, one way or another, ready or not, prepared or ignorant. Now zero comes, the debt is paid, the cycle continues. And the death clock resets, waiting for its next owner, waiting to count down again, waiting for zero. Always waiting for zero.